Happy Tuesday, everybody. Welcome to the Sean O'Connell Show. Happy to be with you here on ESPN 792.1 FM. NBA playoffs, and more importantly, the Shaq and Ernie and Kenny and Chuck just rolling on. We've also got some spring football discussions I want to get to today with that now in our rearview mirror. And, of course, hockey. Unfortunately, not the kind of hockey that involves the Utah Hockey Club, but Stanley Cup playoff hockey going on. Gordy Chase is going to swing by in half an hour. Jeff Schwartz we had to call an audible with Jeff. He's going to jump on with us tomorrow to preview the draft. He got called in out of the bullpen to do some NFL stuff. And you might be shocked to know that NFL stuff is a little bit more important to his bottom line than jumping on our show. So we'll get to Jeff Schwartz.
We see how it is,
tomorrow.
Jeff. We see how it is, okay? Maybe we'll let it – no, just kidding. Jeff, we get it. We'll have you on tomorrow.
James Peterson is producing today. Chris Kamrani is going to join us at 1 o'clock. And Belle Fraser is going to jump on to talk a little hockey instead. So that's going to be fun.
They had a big end of season media availability with Bill Armstrong and Coach Torney, and so Bell, of course, was there. So we'll have plenty to talk about there. Plus, playoffs are happening. We are into Stanley Cup playoffs, and so we'll have her break down some of the stuff we've seen so far. We've got Lightning and Panthers on the station tonight. By the way, that of all of the NHL playoff series, that one, you don't think of the state of Florida when you think of great hockey rivalries necessarily, but that really has become something. Those two fan bases hate each other. Those two teams like to drop the gloves every now and again. Physical hockey, great hockey. You're talking, both squads have Team USA members on them, Team Canada members on them. It's a high-level contest. It's a high-level – I'm trying to think of what the NBA equivalent of that would be. It's like if Denver Lakers, like if it was Nuggets Lakers in the first round. I mean, you could say Lakers Clippers because they're the
Lakers Warriors.
As good of basketball as the Nuggets and Clippers have been the first two games, that's the kind of hockey you're in for with Panthers, Lightning, in-state rivals. Also, two of the last three Eastern Conference champions in the NHL as well. Lightning had those 3 years in a row where they were in the Cup final. Florida, of course, won the Stanley Cup last year. So these are two of the best teams in recent memory in the Eastern Conference.
Like something that we have to get used to. The fact that Florida had a devastating injury during the Four Nations and somehow found ways, because of the rules that exist under the salary cap in the NHL, somehow found ways to then strengthen their roster because of it, because Tkachuk's contract came off the cap for the rest of the season, even though he under those same rules, the loophole exists that he can skate in the playoffs. It's wild.
Have we heard of? Has there been an update on that? He's not playing yet.
He's not, right? But
if
they make it far enough, you'll find a way.
Eastern Conference Final, Stanley Cup Final. Do you see how I got the final parts right? OC.
Like
hockey guy.
There you
over
go.
Here. But somewhere in there they might get their star and one of their and I don't is he the captain, alternate captain, one of their most important players back. And like you said, after being able to use his roster spot and his cap space to get other guys to strengthen the roster, that would be insane.
All right, so I had a poll question yesterday about the WWE and where it belongs in sports media, and it's happening again, James. They're talking WWE on the Pat McAfee show right now.
He is such a wrestling super fan. It doesn't surprise me, but it is wild to see on pretty daytime programming on ESPN, and they're still spending this much time on wrestling.
Okay, well, I feel like because of all the stuff that we were reacting to yesterday, we didn't dive deep enough into spring football. So I wanted to make sure that before we're done with this week, that we've gotten all the spring football out of our systems and that we've answered the questions we need to answer. We've had the conversations that we need to have. One of the big things that I wanted to talk about in spring football was the tight end position and what its role was going to be in this offense. Because there was not a lot of traditional tight end play in the offense at New Mexico. Coach Witt alluded to the idea that, like, yeah, we'll see how it goes. Now, when Coach Beck came on with us, he said, look, I'm going to adjust my offense to the personnel we've got. The personnel he's got is some high-quality tight ends, so he's going to use them. The tight ends that he's using, though, how many touches, who's getting the touches, how are they being used? That's something I wanted to talk about on the show today. That's a poll question I have up at Real OC Sports right now. 877-353-0700 if you want to weigh in on the text line. The last couple of years, well, go back 4 years. The tight end became an absolute, I mean, it was perhaps the strength of the offense for the University of Utah from a positional depth standpoint. You had Brant Keithy when healthy, who was an incredible weapon. You had Dalton Kincaid, who emerged, especially in the absence of Brant Keithy, as the best pass-catching tight end in the country, or second best pass-catching tight end in the country, with respect to Brock Bowers. I mean, you had Cole Fotheringham, who was an incredible blocker, obviously. These last couple of seasons, even with bad quarterback play, you had Keithy still. You had Landon King, who was underutilized. You had Dallin Bentley, who emerged. You had Carson Ryan, who now unfortunately is transferred to BYU because he was so underutilized at the University of Utah. And watching the personnel shifting, we only get to watch so much of practice, but watching the personnel shifting at the University of Utah with Hunter Andrews, a guy they recruited to be a great athlete that they thought they were going to plug in to play defense. And then he was, by the way, he was a standout success offensively at the running back position in his high school career in Texas. He was a 5A player of the year in Texas. In Texas, okay? Kid was an unbelievable running back. But as a, 6'2", 6'3", broad-shouldered white guy, college coaches say, we're going to make you a linebacker. And that's what they planned on doing. And then their linebacker room was a little bit deeper than they expected, I think. And at the end of the day, they said, let's move this kid back to the offense and see what we can get out of him. He's going to be this hybrid role. James, that's what's so interesting to me. He's a tight end. He's a fullback. He's a running back. He's a slot receiver. Once you've had it, you don't want to get rid of it. Once you've had a Brant Keithy-style player, a Swiss Army knife, you don't want to go into any offensive year not having that. So even with a new offensive coordinator, we'll get to the bottom of this. We'll ask Kyle Whittingham. We'll ask Jason Beck. We'll ask position coaches. Who decided that you need that so desperately in your offense? Because, look, no one's complaining that you've got it. But which of the coaches, was it Jason Beck, who's just like, you know what? We got this quarterback who's kind of a do-it-all kid. We need something else. We need another weapon that's kind of a do-it-all kind of guy. You had two versions of that, even in the bad offenses of the last 2 seasons for the University of Utah. When Brant Keith was healthy, he was that. Mekhi Bernard was that. Mekhi Bernard doesn't get enough credit for the fact that he was an incredible receiver out of the backfield. He also proved last year he could be your bell cow back. Do-it-all running back, right?
And you had Sione Vaki for about half a season
also
do the do-it-all thing too.
Correct. I didn't even think of Vaki, so thank you for bringing that up. So
he was running back / Wildcat quarterback / receiver for Utah. I mean, he was incredible in that role.
So you've gotten spoiled on this. You've gotten spoiled on this versatility. You've gotten spoiled on this. I have this thing, this tool in my toolbox that you can use in any assortment of ways. So when there's not an obvious one of those on the roster heading into the spring, they created it. They found a way. They said, you know what? Our tight end room, we could probably have Landon King be that. But I don't know if, like, you can really put him in motion and run jet sweeps with him. I don't know if he's got that kind of quicks. I don't know if he's got that kind of vision. I don't know if he has that kind of speed. He's more of a receiver. He's more of a big-bodied receiver, which is what Dalton Kincaid was. Dalton was not a particularly adept blocker. Dalton was not he was fine, but he's not a particularly physical tight end. He was more the finesse tight end that you're seeing emerge in the NFL, right? And you had a guy in Cole Fotheringham who could fill that role so you didn't need it from other people. It sucks because the like stereotypical Ohio State, Notre Dame, Wisconsin, Iowa tight end, like the Midwestern tight end, those guys, Utah doesn't necessarily breed, and even in their really best tight end years, even in their most successful tight end years, you don't have that version of a tight end necessarily. A George Kittle. Your best option for that transferred to BYU. Carson Ryan left. And that bums me out because I was so high on him as a player. Blocked his ass off, did it in a thankless manner most of the time because he didn't get a lot of touches. And now he's going to BYU, which is bananas. BYU somehow, without using the tight end excessively in the last few seasons, I love A-Rod. Like, A-Rod has not indexed towards the tight end position, even in the really good, like last year was a really, really good year for BYU offensively. I feel like they didn't utilize their tight ends enough. And maybe that was a personnel thing. Maybe that was a compensating for the idea you don't have. Since that lack of evidence that tight end is going to be something that you're really into at BYU, they got Carson Ryan to go down there. He's capable of being an all-conference tight end. They got Carson Ryan to go down there. And then their like number one recruit in next year's class is that tight end kid that we talked about a couple weeks ago. Anyway, fun little aside there. So Utah has Dallin Bentley, who is that traditional prototype physical style tight end, who does not have a ton of touches just yet. Landon King, who everyone was just ripping their hair out last year because he was not getting enough touches, and who got mad at me because I questioned if he ran the correct routes on a couple of plays, that he miscommunicated with the quarterback, and it turns out that it was a 50-50 split. And then you've got this Swiss Army knife that you absolutely had to have. You created it because you missed it. You missed it without even knowing you missed it. You missed it looking at the roster and seeing that, oh my gosh, we don't necessarily have a guy. Brant Keithy is gone. Who's our next Brant Keithy? And they looked around the roster and they said, oh crap, who is it? Well, Lander Barton could probably be a great tight end, but no, he's going to be an NFL linebacker. We can't move him. We can't ask him to play both sides.
They convinced Nate Johnson to come back to be Swiss Army knife guy, but he's not tight end Swiss Army knife.
He's not big and strong and nasty enough. Like he's outside
receiver,
the box.
running back, Swiss Army quarterback, like, Swiss Army
Nate
knife.
Johnson is get him into space and watch him go. The Swiss Army knife that we're talking about is like the traffic Swiss Army knife.
Yeah,
like the greasy, dirty one that's in the bottom of the toolbox that you pull it out. And your dad probably had one of these Swiss Army knives or an old Leatherman tool that it was, you have no idea how that blade stayed so sharp because you never saw anybody sharpen it.
And it looks just beat up.
It was beat all to hell. The enamel on the handle was just nasty. The toothpick and the tweezers out of that Swiss Army knife have been missing for 10 years. The little miniature flip-out blade, the tip was broken off of it. But, man, somehow that thing was still deadly, deadly sharp. And if when you were a kid, you were messing around in that toolbox and you pulled that thing out and you flipped it, it was like, ooh. You boom, thumb cut, bleeding, crying. Mom, I need a Band-Aid. That's the kind of Swiss Army knife
tight
they
end
needed.
fullback Swiss Army knife.
That's exactly what we're talking about. And they looked around this roster and they said, we got to have one. I don't know where we're going to put it in the offense. I know your offense is new, but we have to have that. It's kind of like having an offensive guard that just like, you know, old stink style. Just there's just boogers running down his face. He's got bad breath all the time. and you would never want to have to be the person to wash his underwear. You just need – every team needs an offensive guard that is just disgusting. Just a big, scary, nasty, cantankerous ogre of a man. If you don't have that on your roster, you go find it. Or you move a defensive tackle over to the offensive side of the ball, and you say you have to be the nasty guard.
Yeah,
There are certain things you just have to have on your roster, and Utah football now has to have that greasy old Leatherman tool where one of the things won't even flip out anymore. You can't get the socket to flip out.
They're all stuck together, yeah.
But you know what? That thing's still got the robo grip. That's what you wanted.
Absolutely. Yeah, Scott Mitchell, I was going to say, he likes to say defensive players have to play angry. They just have to be angry. It's part of the mentality of what it takes to be a defensive player. So yeah, switching a guy from D tackle to to be that nasty offensive guard. Yeah, that seems like it's probably pretty effective.
And
you need to do that.
When I was thinking about this last night, I was going back through all the guys that filled this role for Utah football, and like Urban Meyer had that in Ben Moa. That was maybe like the first nasty, mean, ugly Swiss Army knife. And by the way, if you're wondering, how was Ben Moa that nasty? Ben Moa is like 45 years old, has two sons playing college football, and one who's the top recruit in the state of Utah coming up. And Ben Moa has signed to fight a bare-knuckle boxing fight next month.
Have you fought Ben in anything?
I've trained with Ben.
You've trained with him?
I've trained with Ben. Yeah. I will say this. If you are not really good at what you do, like if you don't know how to fight at a very high level, you do not want to cross Ben Moa. And even if you do, it's not going to be a fun night for you.
So it wasn't the most fun experience.
No, it was a phenomenal training session. But like, you're able to recognize that guy because he's still big. He's not like as big as he was when he was a college football player and an NFL football player, but he's still a large man. And you're like, that man at 270-ish pounds, 260-ish pounds, moves with a quickness and a sort of like nimble nature that I don't when I'm 200 pounds. That is different, right? But also that mentality, that's a guy who's successful career-wise, right? His family is grown. He's got nothing to prove. And in his mid-40s, he's like, you know what I would like to do? I would like to step into a ring, and I would like to box somebody with no gloves on. That's the mentality that you're looking for with these types of individuals. You got to have like 5 of them on every football team. Your D-line's got to have at least one. Your offensive line's got to have at least one. And now Utah football has gotten spoiled on the idea of having the tight end position be something that your quarterback can lean on, that your offense can lean on, that your coordinator can lean on, that everyone in the damn stadium on a 3rd down and 7 can be like, all right, get the ball to 10. That's Andrew's number this year. Get the ball to 82. Get the ball to 80. We have to find a way to get that guy in that unfavorable matchup. Let's go. We've gotten spoiled on it.
I like Hunter Andrews' potential. We'll have to see if he's able to put it together this year because he hasn't played this role before. But I like what I've seen. I like what I saw in the media viewing scrimmage we had pre-spring game, and the tight ends love him. Like every time we talk to a tight end in spring post-practice availability, they all mention, Hunter's going to be great for us. It's just right now it's all potential. We need to see if he can do it when the lights are brightest. But I'm bullish on his potential to be a really good weapon for Utah this
year. He's got the right mentality. He's got the right physicality, I think. He's going to have to learn how to play this position, but he's already taken to it like a duck to water. He likes it. There was a play in this scrimmage very, very late in the spring game, okay? This is like final offensive series, I think, or second to last offensive series, where they're down. It's goal line, effectively. And they're trying to punch the ball in. The offense is trying to get that score to win. And I think it was Brendan Zurbrugg was the quarterback, getting his first reps of the spring, it sounded like. And, it's 5 yards going in, and they try to run it up the gut. Great play by the defensive tackle, tackle for loss, whatever. Next play, and they fake like they're going to motion Hunter Andrews across the formation. They snap it as he's motioning across the formation, and he's got what is effectively a backside block on a defensive end who is unblocked by the offensive line. So this defensive end just comes rocketing across the line of scrimmage, thinking that he's got a free shot at the ball carrier, and instead he's got Hunter Andrews in motion. Again, this is you playing against your own team. And it was just like a splash. It was a yard sale. These guys ran into each other, and both of them just fell back, blah, like a skier eating it off a jump or whatever. Both of them landing with their limbs splayed out or whatever. And that's the kind of block he's going to have to get used to throwing if he wants the ball to be thrown to him or handed to him. And he hopped up. Defensive player hopped up. No one was hurt. Great. Sportsmanship. Yeah, we're on the same team. Everything's good. And it was like, all right, that is a tiny little microcosm. You're going to get that 10 times this year, where he's got to sacrifice his body as someone who's used to being the ball carrier. He's got to be the hammer and get somebody else a crease. I think he's got the mentality for it. And I think that's something, by the way, that doesn't come naturally to a lot of guys who are these dynamic playmakers. Brant Keithy, in his middle years of Utah football, before he was your number one offensive weapon, he had to do that. And he didn't excel at it the first couple of years, I'll tell you that. But he grew into that. He figured it out. And it's just kind of a little snapshot of what being a Utah football player under Kyle Whittingham is, I think. And so I put the poll question out. Now that you're spoiled on tight ends, who is going to get the most touches at the tight end position? Is it going to be the stereotypical traditional tight end body, the Dallin Bentley? Is it going to be the Dalton Kincaid light, the wide receiver tight end, Landon King? Is it going to be the Swiss Army knife tight end, the Chris Cooley, the Brant Keithy in Hunter Andrews? Or is it going to be somebody else? Spoiler alert, it's going to be one of those three. But is it going to be one of those three? Which one? And that poll is up at Real OC Sports on the old tweet machine.
By the way, we got a texter who does not agree with you in Carson Ryan's potential. He says, Carson Ryan, slow AF. And he says, not all conference by a long shot. If Utah thought so, they would have paid him more NIL to stay. So there you go. We got a detractor.
Okay, so I think that fine. If that's the point you want to make, you're wrong. Okay, Carson Ryan's an excellent football player. And if your thought as a Utah football fan is, well, if he was that good, Utah would have kept him. That argument disappears with the Keanu Tanuvasa discussion, unfortunately. BYU is paying more NIL money right now than Utah is in most cases, or as much as Utah is in most cases.
And they're coming off a better season, so
they
probably smell a little bit better too.
If you want to question Carson Ryan's loyalty, fine. We can have that conversation. If you want to question whether he felt like he was appreciated in the offense, fine. If you want to say that he's being a diva about not getting enough touches and that's why he transferred, fine. He's a great player. He just is. He was a great high school player.
Not about his talent or lack thereof.
He was an awesome high school player. He was an awesome player at UCLA, and he had the potential to be an awesome player at the University of Utah, and he still has the potential to be an awesome player at BYU. And just because he's no longer with your team, you don't get to be like, well, now he sucks. That's just not how it works. Well, if Jaquindon Jackson was any good, then Utah would have kept him. No, sorry, that's not always how it works. We have to get used to that in the world of transfer portal and NIL money.
Real quick before we break, I wondered what you thought about Isaac Wilson, what you saw from Isaac Wilson in the spring game, and what you saw in the limited windows we were able to see him in practice. Because at times, for me, OC, he did not look any better than he did last year, but at other times, particularly later in the spring, he started to look way more comfortable. I wonder what you think.
So we need to see a lot more of Isaac Wilson to have like any real judgment on his development.
Yeah.
Like, I was only able to go to 2 of the practice availabilities where we got to watch. All right. So that's 40 minutes total time. Maybe 10 of that was Isaac Wilson plus the spring.
Not all of that. Wilson was at quarterback.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's say you get 10 minutes of Isaac Wilson in spring ball and then 10 minutes of him in the spring game. I think the most important thing with Isaac Wilson returning to the University of Utah, I promise you, the humble pie that he had to eat in order to like process this all of last season and the transfer portal venture and now the return to Utah.
And returning to Utah knowing that they already got the number one guy in tow. Yeah.
Like it's not an easy thing to eat that huge helping of humble pie. And he's done it successfully. Is he ever going to be a starting caliber quarterback at the University of Utah? I don't know. He's not a prototypical all-world college quarterback. He's not athletic enough at his size to be what we expect Devin Dampier to be, and he's not big enough to be like the gunslinging Tommy Grady type Utah quarterback. And that's a terrible example, by the way, because Tommy Grady wasn't superb as a University of Utah quarterback. He's small. Isaac Wilson is small, and he has made some questionable decisions, and his confidence got damaged last year, some to his own fault, some to the fault of the coaching staff. But this rebuild, after being stripped down to the bolts by the process of going into the transfer portal and having a bunch of bad starts last year, right? You're this big-time high school recruit. Everybody loves you. You go through spring as an early entrance to college. Everybody loves you. Everyone's so excited. Quarterback number 2, we're set. If Cam Rising goes down for a game or two, Isaac Wilson's going to win it all for us. Everything's going to be fine. Like, you internalize those things if you're a halfway decent player. If you're someone who's as successful as Isaac Wilson has been through the bulk of his football career, you absolutely have that confidence. Times 10, right? And then to have that slowly stripped down, like layers of paint in an old house, to have that thing stripped down until you get to the actual bare wood, which is what the transfer portal, nobody wants you as much as you think you do. You got to go back. You got to say, sorry, coach, I don't want to transfer. I want to be here. I want to be part of the new offense. Great, Isaac. We're going to bring somebody in to replace you. You're not our starter next year. Okay, I understand. That process is a maturation process that very few of us can understand. And it is a good thing. It is a character-building thing. Now, is it a football ability-building thing? I have no idea. Because sometimes your confidence is what makes you great as a quarterback. And if your confidence is gone or it's compromised and is now being built back up, it might take time until he has the confidence to be a great quarterback again. But that right there, as a Utah fan, to have watched and participated in the deconstruction of Isaac Wilson, and now he's trying to build back up, you should just be appreciative of the character of the kid, the character of the family, for having him stick it out. I don't think he's ever going to be a great college quarterback, and I don't say that to be mean or to disparage him in any way. I just think that there's a gap between what he is good at and what you need if you want to be a top-level Big 12 quarterback. But we'll see. We'll find out. And time behind Devin Dampier, by the way, is going to be helpful in that regard. Just like it's not good for a lot of these quarterbacks to jump right into starting duties in the NFL, better for a lot of guys to sit behind the starter, better for you to be Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers than for you to be Alex Smith. That might be a better building case for Isaac Wilson. Good question, James. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to address that.
Yeah, no problem.
The show today and every day is brought to you by Les Schwab Tires. They got tires, wheels, and accessories for whatever it is that you drive. Stop by Les Schwab. Tell them OC sent you. The pros there are going to get the job done right the first time. Gordy Chiesa is going to join us next. NBA playoffs are underway. Shaq is having a runoff set. We'll discuss all of it on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM.
picked it up, has to Leonard. Leonard lost the dribble from the left front court to between the circles. Chased by 2 to the right side, contested 3, short. Rebound, Porter, outlet pass, step, stolen by the Clippers. Porter's down. Back it out to Leonard, back to Powell on the right wing, up for 3. Bang, he got it. Clippers take the lead with 90 seconds to play, 103-100.
Norman Powell, clutch 3. 105-102 game win for the Clippers over the Nuggets. That series is tied up now at a game apiece. ESPN Radio gave us the sound on your home of the NBA playoffs, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Gordy Chiesa, our next guest, I'm sure is watching these playoffs with great interest. Gordy, welcome. How are you?
Oh, see, I'm doing fine. You're right. I'm watching these games with so much enthusiasm. And let's not forget about Kawhi Leonard, how great he really is. Remember, he was a two-time MVP of the finals back in 2014 with the Spurs and with the Raptors in 2019. So this guy is battle-tested. And last night he was absolutely sizzling his mid-range jump shooting, and he made so many great plays defensively. And that's why they're able to hold off the Nuggets.
So when you bring up something interesting, because a lot of the response that I saw on social media and a lot of the stuff, even halftime, postgame, you must have forgot about Kawhi. When there's a player, and there's a lot of them in the NBA, when there's a guy who was a one-time MVP or one-time played at or close to an MVP level, multiple-time All-Star, and he kind of gets quieter. Not that he's less productive even, or not that he's like fallen off a cliff yet in his career, but he's just, that he's on a team that's a little bit less prominent, or he's just a little bit less noticeable as a star in the league. Guys like SGA emerge and Tatum emerge, and the Kawhi Leonards just fade into the background. Not a lot, but a little bit. And then that guy has a performance like this, Gordy. How does it resonate in the NBA, kind of across the board?
Well, it's a reminder how brilliant he really is. And that playoff experience does matter. He's 33 years old, and his body's slightly breaking down. And he's been injured the last 2 years. He missed the first 34 games of the season this year. And then they held him out as far as very few back-to-backs until late March, early April. They did the right thing. And so they tried to preserve his body, and he delivered a knockout punch to the Nuggets. So it's very common. A guy that's on he's injured, he's on a lesser team, or the team isn't winning at that moment. They do make the playoffs, meaning the Clippers, and they emerges again. Also with Kawhi Leonard, he has also a sidekick in James Harden. So a lot of James Harden's brilliance is because of Kawhi Leonard, and he's in the forefront. Harden gets the ball more. See, Kawhi makes it so interesting. He can score 39 points literally without the ball, the way he plays, versus being ball dominant. So he has a dominant game without a dominant personality.
How sustainable is it for Kawhi? Like, can we expect this from him for however deep the playoff run goes for the Clippers, or is it going to come in spurts?
We can expect him to play well. There's no back-to-backs. And so that's a factor also. And then only one time zone away. So when you do travel, it's not going across the country unless it's the NBA Finals. By that time, you're so happy to be in the finals, you care less as far as who you're going to play against. So the answer is yes. We can see him perform at a high level because he's a two-way player. And that's why it's so critical that people understand that besides scoring the ball, you have to defend your position, and he did. He did a good job on Aaron Gordon last night, and it really helped the Clippers. So with that said, it was an outrageous game, the Nuggets. They played they had so many wonderful moments also. But the Nuggets, you can't win a playoff game showing if you have 20 turnovers and you miss 8 free throws. And so they lost a very close game. They won game one in overtime. This is the byproduct, so they've got to clean that up.
Jokic with another triple-double, and a lot has been made of the fact that he's so great without having obvious great teammates. Now, I think it's a little bit unfair to some of the guys he does play alongside in Denver because he's got some really high quality helpers, if you want to call it that. But is he really going to have to carry this Nuggets team even more than he already is if they want to get a series win over the Clippers?
Yes, he does. Absolutely. He's got to play at the elite level almost every possession. And it was illustrated last night where a triple-double, however, he had 7 turnovers, including the one with 39 seconds left when he threw a ball across the floor and Kawhi got the steal. That was just more mental fatigue. You know, people say sometimes, well, so-and-so's tired. They're not really tired physically. They're tired mentally. And that's Jokic, where there's so much pressure on him to make a play for his team. And now is LeBron James also until they got Luka Doncic, where LeBron's brilliance his last 5 years with the Lakers, now 6 years, but 5 years without Luka, is that LeBron had to play literally make situations for his teammates to score himself, make every free throw, make a positive impact as far as three-point shooting. And that's Jokic right now. So he needs help from Jamal Murray. And let's state the obvious 1 second. The Nuggets bench is very, very porous, minus Russell Westbrook, who's a wild card. And so it's the 5 starters plus Russ. And that's who they're going to try to go against the Clippers.
All right, on the other side, last night we saw in the East, the Pistons tie it up in the series with the Knicks. That one is a game apiece now. How do you see it playing out in the long run?
Well, the first thing is that the upstart Detroit Pistons, they played two wonderful games back-to-back, but Knicks had that 21.0 spurt in Game 1 and knocked the Pistons out. They almost fell apart, the Pistons, the young team, but they gathered themselves. And so it was their first win in the postseason, the Clippers, the Pistons, in 17 years. That's how long ago it was for them to win a playoff game. And a quick side note about this, Sean, do you realize that the general manager of the Pistons is former Jazz general manager and vice president Dennis Lindsey? And so he runs the Pistons this year, and they made that great trade for Dennis Schroeder at the trading deadline. And ironically, the Jazz were part of that as far as being facilitator with the Miami Heat and also with the Golden State Warriors. So Schroeder last night gets 20 points off the bench, and that allows Kate Cunningham, who had a tremendous game, to play off the ball and not have the mental fatigue of getting everybody involved. So the Pistons, now they go home to Motown and they play Game 3, and it's going to be a tight series. And we shall see. Game 3 will be huge as far as what team can get an advantage again.
Cade Cunningham is a top what player in the NBA right now?
20.
Wow.
Top 20 player in the NBA. And he's only 22 years old. So he's absolutely trending to be an all-NBA performer. And he's the first pick of the draft. So this shows you that let's hope it's the Jazz take Cooper Flagg, because that's who you're staring at as far as that impact type thing. And that's what you want to do. So Cade Cunningham has changed the whole culture because he can score the ball, but he's also pass happy. And this is 4th season in the NBA. And usually speaking, with an exception being the outlier, it takes 3 or 4 years for a guy to really develop into a top player, even though he has knockout talent at a young age, because the game slows down for you and they're able to make plays out of chaos. And just generally speaking, you respect the ball more on the court during the game, and decision-making is now favorable for you versus trying to be a risk taker. It's a huge factor. Just like being Sean, NFL quarterback, where you want to be risk adverse as far as your passes, especially in the fourth quarter. Well, that's in basketball also, is that you want to protect that ball. And in the fourth quarter, what the Pistons did, unlike the Knicks, they had very few turnovers, and they got the ball from point A to point B, and Cade Cunningham was the guy that was driving the ball and creating body fouls against Knickerbocker defense, and that held off the Knicks as far as the Pistons win.
Gordy Chase, our guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show, talking all things NBA playoffs. Tonight's games, Milwaukee at Indiana. Indiana 4.5-point favorites there. Memphis at OKC. OKC 14.5-point favorites. That's a big line for a playoff game. Minnesota at Los Angeles Lakers. Lakers 5.5-point favorites. Which of those games has the bulk of your interest?
T-Wolves at Lakers. I was shocked that J.J. Redick said that they were surprised the physicality of Minnesota. Really? Are you kidding me? That's Minnesota's calling card. And that LeBron has played the most games in history of basketball in the playoffs, and Luka Doncic has been being physical upon his whole career. So I was shocked when they said that. So from the Lakers' point of view, can they regroup right now? Can they get themselves ready to play mentally and get everybody involved? And LeBron only took 2 foul shots in that game. So when's the last time you think LeBron in a playoff game will only go to the foul line 2 times? And so he's got to force his will more on the defensive ability of the T-Wolves, and that from the T-Wolves' point of view is that they've got to keep continuing pounding the boards and make the Lakers have a differential as far as negative, where they go small in the game, and that hurts them on the boards. So with Rudy Gobert playing really well for them inside, and Naj Reid, it really was advantageous for them.
We've seen in the playoffs where teams will go small, and then Rudy becomes a little bit more of a defensive liability because of the perimeter attacks from a smaller lineup. Are the Lakers going to do that to try to get Rudy out of the game?
Yes, absolutely, yes. And they'll try to do that. So then, well, that's the point. Then they play Jaden McDaniels and Julius Randle, and so they have a lot of bodies. The T-Wolves. Let's not forget they lost in the conference finals last year to the Mavericks 4-1. So they won 2 rounds last year. And Anthony Edwards, they have a star player catalyst where he's developing his all-around game. First game, 22 points, which is right about his average, but 9 assists and 8 rebounds. And then Naz Reid off the bench gives them another different look. And from the Lakers' point of view is that they need more from Rory Hachimura. They need more from Jared Vanderbilt. They need more from Dorian Finney-Smith. And they've got to bang the boards, those guys, and neutralize and not outplay the other team's secondary players. So it's fascinating. So here we are in L.A. The Clippers won in Denver. They flew back to L.A. right out of an airplane. They were so high. And now the Lakers, their arch rival, is fighting for the life, even though it's game 2, where they've got to win this game. It's almost like a must-win against the T-Wolves tonight.
What are the Utah Jazz coaches, front office, what are they doing right now as everyone holds their breath and waits to see what the draft lottery gifts the Utah Jazz or curses the Utah Jazz with, I guess, is also a possibility. This I guess, interim phase. What is the day-to-day like for coaches and front office?
They're studying the films right now again. They're really fine-tooth combing about all their players that they might be drafting. Hopefully it's 1, 2, or 3, God forbid, and then also at 21, and then also at 53, and probably 42 or 43 when they have the coin flip. So that's what they're doing. They're watching the films, and also they're doing intel, getting as much information from all sorts of people, whether it's the kid's high school coach, whether it's rec coach, whether it's the high school principal, whether it's the college assistant, whether it's the trainer of the college team. A lot of times, Sean, the trainer, meaning the medical staff, is a huge component of a player, how he thinks. They're with him all the time at his good moments and bad moments, especially during injury. So they're trying to get all the intel they can and gather it, and then validate what they already see on the court and match up the personality with the player. And that's why, again, this thing called chemistry, it's so important. And as far as the maturity factor, when does a person in life or in sports mature? Is it age 21? Is it age 27? Is it age 31? Is it age 81? And that's the thing. No one knows it. And so much is based on your teammates. So the Jazz personnel are getting ready to go to the combine in Chicago, which is May 11th. And then you mentioned earlier about everybody's looking for Monday, May 12th. That's the NBA draft lottery selection order. Now, Sean, next Monday also is an important part as far as all the coaches in the NBA and the personnel people. That's the deadline for early entering the draft. So, again, but they say some of the Duke players, we know the top names, they're coming to the draft. But are the other guys in Duke coming in the draft? Are other schools, some of the players are entering the draft? So we'll know by next Monday at 11:59 p.m. if those guys will be in the draft.
Gordy, real quick, what's the list today?
Okay, the list today, quickly, is the NBA playoff leaders in Korea-made three-point shots. So the dozen best ever most made three-point shots in playoff history. Number 12, Derek Fisher made 285 triples. Number 11, Kobe Bryant made 292. Number 10 all-time, J.R. Smith, 294. And showing J.R. Smith, that guy shot the ball for both teams during the exact same time, if you know what I mean. That sometimes he played for his home team, and sometimes he shot the ball erratically, helped the other team. Number 9, Danny Green had made 315 triples. Number 8, from TNT fame, Reggie Miller, 320 triples. Number 7, Manu Ginobili of the Spurs, 324 made triples, including so many of them clutch. Number 6, Kevin Durant, all-time, 366. Number 5, I had the pleasure to coach this guy when I coached the Seattle Sonics, Ray Allen, 5th all-time, 385. Number 4, he made 4 last night in the game. James Harden has 426 made triples. Number 3, he's playing tonight in Crypto.com. LeBron James, 3rd all-time, 471. Number 2, the other person of the Splash Brothers, Klay Thompson, has made 501 made triples in playoff history, and the number 1 player of all time with the most ever career-made three-point shots, we all know him, Steph Curry, has made 623 made triples with a shooting percentage of 39.8 from 3. Thus, that's my list of the all-time leaders in Korea. Quickly, what about Jazz basketball? Who's the leader? Donovan Mitchell leads the Jazz franchise in the most made playoff Korea threes at 129, with Donovan shot 36.9 from threes for his career with the Jazz.
I would not have guessed Donovan Mitchell. I would have said Hornacek would have been my guess. But you learn something new every day. Gordy, you're the man. I always appreciate your time.
And the reason why, Sean, is because this era is much more threes.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's good. That's good. Now, the question right now is, can you make those threes? And these guys all have. Steph Curry, number 1 by far. It's so interesting how he makes those threes, including against unbelievable defense trying to guard him.
Gordy, enjoy the games tonight. We'll talk again soon. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Sean. Peace out.
Gordy Chiesa. Sean O'Connell Show continues with the Hot Lunch next on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. buckle up at the start of hour number 2. We're going to talk some college football ethics. Yeah, going to get real soapboxy up in this. You know what I'm talking about. Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 792.1 FM. New partner on the show, Top Local Roofing. You've heard me talking about them, 801-839-4501. Call now, get on the schedule. Eugene joins me from Top Local Roofing. Eugene, what's up? How are you?
Hey, OC, how you doing today?
Doing all right. I'm looking at you guys you came on the show last week and you had all these great offers. Free ridge vents with a new roof, 50% off gutters with a new roof, and you keep upping the offer. Now a $100 gift card as well added on top with the roof purchase. You got to get on the schedule today, though, at 801-839-4501. Look, these are great deals, but how do I know as a homeowner if it's time to really call Top Local Roofing? If I walk out my front door, I turn around and I look at my roof, it's been on it's been on the house for a while now, but how do I know if I need to be calling a professional just yet?
Well, here's something that you guys are probably going to think pretty funny is if you look up front and your roof looks like it's been bedazzled, that kind of looks like you can see the fiberglass showing on the mat. That's one way you can tell that you need to give us a call.
You don't want a sparkly, shiny roof, Eugene? Why not?
No, you don't want a sparkly, shiny roof. That means that the mat is deteriorating. That means that you're losing all of the granules that are up there to support the roof mat. They've all dissipated and went down your gutter drain system, and there's nothing up there to protect the mat.
Okay, so if I see that, if I look up there and I'm not quite yet seeing the shiny stuff, but I'm like, all right, this roof is, I don't know. I bought the house 10 years ago. I don't know how long it was on the roof or I was on the house before then. I see a couple corners kind of wrinkling up on those shingles. Maybe I've got a cedar roof and the shakes are coming off. What's the best way to get a hold of you guys?
The best way is to give us a call. We can reach out. You can reach out to us. Give us a call. We come out, take a look at everything, and let you know how things look.
And that 50% off gutters deal still going on. The free ridge vent still going on. $100 gift card still going on. And you don't have to replace that roof today, obviously. It's not a quick turnaround quite like that. But you guys can get it done in a couple of weeks. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
So we're talking a short turnaround time. We're talking all these deals stacking up on top of each other. And Top Local Roofing has been killing it in this harsh Utah climate for a decade plus. 801-839-4501. Get on the schedule today and take advantage of those deals. Free ridge vents, 50% off seamless gutters, $100 gift card. Eugene, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Top Local Roofing, 801-839-4501. I keep telling you, just save the number in your phone. Do that so you don't have to Google. You don't have to look it up. When you do come around to being like, you know what, I got to get these gutters checked out. I got to get this roof checked out. I got to figure out what my house needs up on top, protecting all the stuff inside the house. Just have the number saved in your phone already, 801-839-4501. And when you do call, tell them that OC sent you. All right, James, you're going to have to probably rein things in a little bit. Right now, the wild, wild west of the transfer portal and NIL endorsements and all that stuff in college football and college basketball, as we talked about yesterday, as we talked about last week, as we've been talking about the last 3 years, it is completely, completely out of hand. And I put a poll question up today, whether you support as a Utah fan, do you support Utah football playing dirty in this space?
You said college and ethics, and I was like, oh, no, that wasn't my favorite class, OC.
James.
But then I forgot you slipped in the football part.
You heard it here
makes
first. James doesn't like ethics. We'll get to all of this on the Sean O'Connell Show next. It's ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Are you willing to watch Utah football, Utah basketball, Utah gymnastics, Utah whatever? Are you willing to watch Utah athletics, your favorite teams, play dirty in the college sports world right now? Transfer portal, NIL, etc. In order to be successful, to compete at the highest level, to win conference championships, to make a college football playoff, to be a perennial contender in basketball, and to be a presence in the NCAA tournament. Are you okay with a compromise of values?
I mean, I am, because I don't like ethics.
Yeah, James is
I'm all in for that.
He's an anti-ethics individual. 877-353-0700 if you want to weigh in on our text line. And thanks to everyone who is weighing in on the text line today.
We've had some good back and forth today on the text line.
Even people who don't like my opinions, I still like hearing from you. Yeah. I mean, it's like that's the whole thing. This is a discussion.
Some good back and forth. Responding to what you had to say about Utah football in the first segment. Keep it coming. 877-353-0700. You can call us too. We'll get you on the air. Bring whatever you want about Utah football or otherwise.
Focusing on football specifically, do you support the idea of Utah football playing dirty in the transfer portal? Like poaching, contacting guys, reaching out to guys that are not in the portal, that have no obvious intention of entering the portal, that are happy at where they're at and are in a good situation playing time-wise and probably also NIL-wise, because those two things now go hand in hand in Power 4 football. Are you okay? And you really have to think about this, okay? Are you all right with the idea that, like, okay, so we all know that BYU is calling a bunch of people right now, all right? And they have been. And it's undeniable, and it was successful in the case of Keanu Tanavasa most notoriously. It was successful in the case of Carson Ryan. It's been successful in the case of other guys. And I'm not saying Utah hasn't done this to acquire, like, I don't know, any of the guys that came in the transfer portal. I really, truly don't know. But are you okay with the idea that if Sione Pua is calling Keanu Tanuvasa or Keanu Tanavasa's dad or whatever and saying, hey, man, I'm the one who recruited you and developed you and mentored you at Utah, and now I'm at BYU, and I'd love to have you come down here, and we have a 7-figure deal for you in the NIL space, but you got to put your name in the transfer portal. And the response to that is like, dude, I literally a week ago on Twitter was making fun of everyone who was going in the transfer portal. I was saying, a Utah man, sir, and will be till I die. I was like quoting the lyrics of the Fight song literally days ago. All right, but we want you to come down here. If you are willing to entertain that is happening on the BYU side of things, are you also okay and supportive of the idea that then your guy's going to do it too? That Luther Ellis is also going to call a highly coveted player who's not in the transfer portal, who might be expressing the same kind of things on social media. I love Oklahoma Sooners football, and I would never leave ever. Well, let me see. I'm going to call that kid anyway. Washington State, doesn't matter if we're in the Mountain West Conference that's called the Pac-12 now. I love the Palouse. I'm never leaving. All right, well, hold on. Send that kid a DM on Instagram and see how true that is. Are you okay with the idea that Utah, needing defensive tackles right now to bolster that defensive tackle room, is not only having to build a fence around the talent already, is not only having to stiff arm the suitors for Dallas Vakalahi, who are like, hey, man, we'd love to have you come play here. And you have to step up your NIL contributions for these players already. You have to re-recruit them, so to speak. But are you supportive of the idea that in order to compete at the highest level, you have to kind of do the dirty stuff now? There are a lot of schools, a lot of fan bases who have just thrown their hands up and said, I hate when people do it to us, but we're okay with doing it to other people because we want to win at all costs. There is no meaningful, serious practice of tampering reinforcement or enforcement or punishment. There's no tampering punishment that actually makes sense in the college football world right now. And by the way, if anyone does get punished for tampering, watch. The NCAA is going to come down, and they're just going to be like, McNeese State is losing 3 scholarships for tampering because they got somebody from Nichols State. And everyone's just going to be like, come on, dude.
Just to show, hey, we are enforcing this.
Yeah, we're enforcing because they're not going to be like, Ohio State is losing 3 scholarships.
How dare you, OC? Ohio State doesn't tamper.
Okay, James, this is it. This is easier. This is easier to do.
Okay.
All right?
Okay.
You're an Ohio State fan.
Yeah, go Bucks.
I'm a Notre Dame fan. All right?
And, of course, a proud Utes alum.
Are you okay with the prospect in your mind, without knowing 100% of the detail, but just knowing in your mind that Ohio State, when they identify a need on their roster, like, gosh, we need a kicker, man, that they pick up the phone and they call whoever the best kicker in the country is, regardless of that guy's eligibility and status in another program? Are you okay with that?
Yeah, I really am.
Okay. Like you said, you're an unethical person. Yeah,
yes, I'm an
ethics.
unethical person, so yeah, of course I am. It's interesting. When we've had Scott Mitchell on the show on Mondays, and he's talked about this on his show as well, Down and Dirty, 10 to 11 here on ESPN 792.1 FM, right before this show. He said, if you are not calling guys you've recruited before, especially those guys who are in your conference, guys who know you and your school and your coaching staff well enough to consider playing for you, you're not doing things the right way. He said you need to be doing this illegal tampering in today's world without using those words. And he said Kyle Whittingham needs to be doing that. Now, what I say is, obviously, because it's technically against the rules, you can't have your head coach being the one making those calls.
And nobody does.
Right, and nobody is. But you have someone, some degree of separation, whether they're officially on your staff or they're not, working on your behalf to help convince some guys to put their name in the transfer portal to come to your school. Or guys who you've heard are about to put their name in the transfer portal anyway, you're maybe having someone reach out to them just a little bit early to gain that advantage. And I tend to agree with Scott. Like, that's the way the game is played nowadays. And yes, it's against the rules, but the NCAA is not enforcing anything, as you said. You're not really risking much by doing what everyone else is doing.
So when I think about things like this, I try to frame it in other portions of our life to either have it make sense or have it not make sense, right?
We cut corners all the time.
Every one of us does. Okay.
So
let me ask you this, James.
Especially me, because I am so anti-ethics.
How long did you date your wife before you became engaged and married?
It was before I was engaged.
Yeah.
It was 2.5 months, but then we didn't get married for another 9 months.
Okay, wait. You dated for 2.5 months and then proposed?
Yes.
Oh, yes. James. I did not know this.
Then we
That's love at first sight. I love that.
But then we had a 9-month engagement.
Okay.
So
that timeline changes this question just a little bit, but I'm still going to ask it, all right? Okay, so you're dating for 2.5 months. She's your girlfriend for 2.5 months, right? Some other guy comes up to her and is just like, hey, I'd like to take you out to dinner. And she's like, I have a boyfriend. He's like, don't care. I would love to take you out to dinner. Are you bothered by that?
Yes.
Okay. Now, would you ever be that guy? Your wife, the love of your life, soon to be mother of your child, right? Already mother of your child, but soon to be mother of a child you actually get to hold.
Yeah.
You see her at the mall. Red Cliffs Mall in St. George.
Yeah.
Okay?
Shout out to Red Cliffs Mall. Malls are back, by the way.
Yes, that's why I brought it up. Okay? But let's stay on task here, James. You walk up to your wife and you just say, you are a revelation. I have never seen such a beautiful thing in my life. And something tells me you also have a glowing personality and cunning intellect. I want to get to know you. Please let me take you out to dinner.
I would.
And she says,
how did you know that verbatim that was my line?
And she says to you, I'm sorry, I have a boyfriend. What's your response, James?
I would probably do the persistent, hey,
you need
just
to
one
go on
time.
a date with this woman.
Just like give me one date, and if you don't, if
he doesn't have to know,
we won't do anything. It'll just be dinner.
How long have you guys been dating? I promise I won't try to kiss you. Whatever it is, right?
Absolutely.
That's what this is.
Now, you asked am I bothered at the idea of someone else doing that?
Yeah.
Yes, I am, but I'd be more.
Do it?
I would do. I'd be more bothered if my wife, now girlfriend at the time, if that had happened and she actually decided, yeah, you know what, I'll give him a chance. So it's less. I don't hate. I'm not as bothered by people trying as I would be of like, okay, but you let that happen.
But that's the thing,
but
James.
That's the thing about it.
That's the world we're living in right now.
You risk that thing that you actually hate more happening by being okay with this, which makes you go, well, I shouldn't be okay with this, but at the same time, nothing is going to stop it from happening.
That's so the attention. So
you have
is coming.
to kind of be okay with it, and
you also kind of have to be okay with your significant other in this case entertaining that attention.
Yeah,
and being like, well, I'll at least hear him out. So your wife's ex-boyfriend has to at least be okay with, well, of course she sees somebody like James and at least wants to hear what he has to say. Of course she at least wants to go to dinner with him.
Of course.
That's where the commitment.
Look at me. Of course she would.
Yeah, exactly.
Look at me on YouTube at ESPN 700 Sports Utah.
That's what's so wild about this whole situation is you don't want it to happen to your player, but you kind of have to at least be willing to reach out. Like, this is your long-term happiness, James. If you had never asked out that wife of yours, even whether she had a boyfriend or not.
Who, by the way, just for the record, did not have a boyfriend.
Okay.
But
I will say this. Like,
you're right. If you feel that smitten by somebody, you have to try.
All these players are just dating right now, even when they're on a roster. Like spring football, they're just dating. Now, in the fall, they're probably engaged. Like they go into fall camp, and that changes the question just a little bit, James. You walk up to your wife, and you're just like, I really, really need this date. Like, I need for me and you to be married in the next 3 months. Because actually, it's in the next 8 weeks because I really, really need to win some football games this year. I need for you to at least give me a date. And she's like, dude, I'm engaged. Do you stop your pursuit? In your real life, yes, you do, because you're not actually an unethical person. But in the job of being a college football coach, you're like, I don't care if you're engaged to that program. I don't care if they're paying you $1 million. I don't care if you just were on Twitter mocking everybody who enters the transfer portal. I care about whether or not you're going to help me win football games in the fall. And this is where it gets so disconnected for a fan base. Because, look, most BYU fans think that they are above the rest of the college world in terms of their morality and their honor code and their ethics on this front. And they have a false belief about that. I want to know if Utah fans feel the same way. Because I think the sentiment among Utah fans is, no. This is a program that does things the right way. This is a program that has an increased level of integrity. And in a lot of ways, that is absolutely true. In this way, though, I think you have to be willing to compromise as a Utah fan. Like, by all means, expect Utah football players to carry themselves in a way that sets them apart, even from the surrounding community. Understand that they're young men, but expect honesty, integrity, hard work, character. They got to fit that mold if they want to play for Morgan Scalley, if they want to play for Jason Beck, if they want to play for Kyle Whittingham. You got to be better than the average college student. I demand that of a Utah football player. If I'm demanding things of a Utah football coach, I demand that they're honest with these players, that they tell them the truth about what their future looks like with Utah football. But also, I'm going to allow for the fact that they're hopefully doing some Yep, I said it. They're hopefully doing some shady stuff to try and get the best talent to the University of Utah. You know how crazy it is for me to say that?
Yeah.
I would rather sit here and be like, no. Utah football, I want them to be like the Naval Academy, the Air Force Academy. I want them to be like, you have to be the upper crust academically. You have to
Stanford
show up
now.
Yeah, you have to show up to drill. You have to have committed to serve your country after you're done with this academy. I want like the best of the best of the best. That's what I want. But also, I also want you to like just please do whatever's necessary to get us some wins. I want Kyle Whittingham to be unapologetically old school and be like, dude, I'm not doing things the bad way. I'm not doing things the shady way. I'm like, no, but do just a little bit, please, coach.
Yeah.
I will suffer no foolishness, no drug use on this team, no mistreatment of women on this team. I'm like, you're damn right, coach. Uphold that standard. And then as soon as he gets to, and we are not going to tamper in the transfer portal. Timeout. Hold on. Take that one off, coach.
Yeah, go ahead and do a little bit of that.
High academic standard, all right? Open the door for people on campus. Smile for all the fans. Be incredibly nice. Treat women with respect. All of these things, right? I want all of that.
As J.J. Watt would say, be some good-ass dudes.
Yes, just be the best dudes possible. Demand that of this team. That is the Utah football culture. And then when they get to – and also, we will not lie, cheat, or steal. We will do nothing shady in the transfer portal. We will not contact players who are committed at other schools. I'm going, wait.
Let's take that part out.
Walk that one back a little bit. You personally will not call those folks Kyle Whittingham, but you better make damn sure that somebody on the staff has that phone number and is making that phone call.
Just carefully. This is how careful you be about it. You say, I won't. You don't say Utah football, and you don't say we.
I will not. I, Kyle Whittingham, will not contact any player who is not in the transfer portal. Oh, all right, good. Don't say anything about the assistant coaches. Don't say anything about.
Hey, we got so-and-so from the transfer portal.
Don't say a single
I
word
don't want to know how you got him.
Your general manager. Say nothing about Bobby Blecken. Junk can call him. Anybody else up there can call him. Like, you have to be willing, unfortunately now, to engage in unethical, slightly shady, even illegal practices. And this is the cost of doing business in college sports.
When it comes to transfer portal recruiting, I absolutely agree. To be clear, we're not saying that Utah's doing that, but we're saying it's not the worst thing in the world. In fact, we encourage Utah to do some of this because and we're getting some good responses to your Twitter polls and the text line on this. There's people saying just the everybody else is doing it mentality is not a good enough excuse for you to also engage in it. Yes, generally in almost every other walk of life, that is absolutely true. But when it comes to sports and college sports right now, yeah, everybody else is doing it is a fine reason to do it yourself.
This coming in on the text line, in a vacuum, I don't want them to, but with the way the game is played, they have to. Just glad they aren't part of a church's missionary program or flagship. That would be awkward. I don't know how BYU resolves this, like, internally. I really don't, because you do Notre Dame the same thing, right? SMU, I guess the same thing. When you're attached to a religion, when you're attached to a church, morality is supposed to be part of your mission, and ethics are supposed to be part of your mission. That applies not just to BYU. I want to make it clear. It's not just BYU. That applies to any religiously affiliated university in my mind.
I'll say there's at least a couple of religiously affiliated schools that had no problem hiring Hugh Freeze recently. They find their own, those kind of institutions tend to find their own ways to justify things. And I'm not saying I'm not casting aspersions, to use a word that you like to use, OC, on BYU for playing the game the way it needs to be played either. It is just, it does feel like internally it's got to be a little bit more. You got to put in a little more effort and time to reconcile that when you're telling everyone that we're about something bigger than football.
The reconciling is where the mental gymnastics come into place. And we saw some of that with the basketball discussion last week.
Yeah.
We're never going to be the highest bidder. Like, that somehow helps? Okay. That's a silly thing to say because you've been the highest bidder at least twice, and you will continue to be the highest bidder, and that's something I think you should be proud of. But, like, that's where you're seeing that difficulty in reconciling these two facts. Like, we are supposed to be playing 100% by the rules because part of our mission statement as a university or part of our culture as a program, which is the case for a lot of football cultures. Like, no, guys, we're going to do it the right way. How many college football coaches are just making the point with every single recruit and every single family, we are going to do it the right way, all right? We're going to work hard, and we're not going to cut corners, and we're going to do it the right way. Since the beginning of time, that has been a message. No. When you're running your gassers, if you don't touch that line, if I don't see your fingertips hit the chalk, you're running it again. Why, Coach? Because you're doing it the right way. It's the principle of the matter. You have to do it the right way.
In basketball, it was running around the baseline and the sidelines, and literally you cut corners.
Yeah, you could step over the corner.
But coaches, if some coaches, and it wasn't every practice, but sometimes they wanted to remind you, hey, we're not going to do things the easy way all the time. And they say, hey, you go around that corner, all right? The same way, and doing suicides, the same thing as you talk about the gassers. Get your hand on that line.
That's right.
So, but it's not every time, but it's just enough. They let you do it just enough to think that you're free to do whatever you want, and then they call you out on it just to remind you, actually, no, you got to do it the way I need you to do it.
Blow the whistle, get back. Yeah. You're running that one again. We're not cutting corners. We're doing it the right way. On principle, we're doing it the right way. And then these new rules and this new landscape of college football comes into place, and you are forcing.
And there's almost no rules.
You're forcing hypocrisy upon, like, really high-character individuals. It's insane, but it's the way things are in college sports right now. And by the way, all of us as fans have to be like, yeah, all right, cool. Because the alternative is, if you're Utah, potentially the alternative this year, let's say that Kyle Whittingham, for the sake of this argument, let's say that Kyle Whittingham tells everyone in his program, player, coach, personnel, trainer, says, under no circumstances will you contact anyone and campaign with them to come to Utah if they are not already in the transfer portal. Let's say that he puts an edict out there. You will be fired. You will be separated from whatever your duties are here. You will be donezo. If you contact anyone who is not already in the transfer portal, if you try to cut these corners, if you try to do anything shady, you're not part of this business with me. And so nobody does it. Everyone plays exactly strictly by the book. No tampering whatsoever for Utah football in this portal window, which extends for, another 4 days? Potentially, you don't get the added depth you need at the defensive tackle position. Now, maybe there's enough guys already in the transfer portal that you like, that you're willing to bring in, and you can successfully bring in. So maybe you can solve that problem, but maybe you...
Oh, my bad. No, but how are we... Oh, my bad. No, but how are we so far behind whatever other team in the conference? That's the kind of stuff you're screaming. And here's the other thing about it. As ethical a person as you try to be, and we're making jokes about how I'm unethical, I do try to be a very ethical person in my job and all walks of life. But that being said, because we're human beings, we're all cutting corners.
Here's the thing.
Sometimes we're cutting those corners sometimes, and we're getting, like I mentioned, the basketball, the football coach analogy at practice, we're getting called out by by our bosses when every once in a while when we get caught cutting those corners, and then we straighten out, and then we just go back cutting those corners a little bit again. Different corners, maybe the same ones. Like, it's ethics are important, but none of us are 100% ethical.
I will say this. My ethics are such now that I just, James, assume, because we're going to be working together hopefully for a very long time, just assume, James, that I'm cutting corners. All right? Like, just assume that I'm doing things in what I think is the most efficient way, the best way, the most successful way. And whether or not it's the right way, just assume that I'm like, we're trying our best.
I'm going to keep my eye on you, O'Connell.
Yeah, go ahead. There are places in your life where you have to draw your line in the sand with your morality and with your ethics. This is no longer one in college sports. It just isn't. If this is where you choose to draw the line, then you're on the wrong side of the ledger and you're going to lose. You're going to get outpaced in recruiting and in an NIL competition, and you're going to lose. So this is no longer a battlefield where you can even fight the battle and win. You just have to get swept up in the tide, and you just have to become part of the problem. And I know that sucks. And I hope that there's ways that Utah and BYU and Utah State, I hope there's ways that they can finagle it so they're closer to the right side of the ledger. They're closer to the good sportsmanship, the ethical side of this. But there's just nobody whose nose gets to stay clean anymore. By the way, the results of the polls so far, as I asked the question, do you support the idea of Utah football playing dirty in the transfer portal, poaching, contacting guys not currently in portal, etc.? 40% of people still say no, that's beneath the Utes. 60% of people are saying, no, yeah, everyone's doing it, so you got to do it. We're not even at 50-50 yet. We're far away from this being 100% acceptable to the Utah fan base. And if I ask this question to BYU fans, it's going to look similar or even more skewed in the no, you have to, that's beneath BYU. And at Utah State, you're going to get a similar number to this as well. I would like to conduct this poll for every fan base in the entire country, James. But we can't. At least not on this show. Make sure you're listening to ESPN 700 Sports live. But if you can't, ESPN 700 app, free on the preferred app store, ESPN700sports.com. You can tell your smart speakers to just say, play ESPN. We've got so much to get to. This is part of our Big 12 coverage at noon, brought to you by Mountain Land Supply. And also, we've got the Utah Golf Association Festival of Tees happening. We're giving away 18 holes of golf, free rounds of golf from the best courses in the state all week long, and we gave them all last week as well. On Down and Dirty with Scott Mitchell, right here on the Sean O'Connell Show, on The Drive with Spence Checketts from 2 to 6. Make sure you're listening. Lots left to get to in this hour, and then we're going to have Chris Kamrani at 1 o'clock. We're going to have Belle Fraser at 1:30. Close out the show strong. I can't believe I'm doing this, but I'm starting to come around. Deion Sanders made a pretty strong case to the detractors of him retiring his own son's number. He had a pretty decent argument. Now, I don't think he should have retired Shador's number, but I think that Travis Hunter's number should have been retired. And Coach Prime's thinking on this is not as far off target as most people probably think. We'll get to that next. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. All right, I was out of town when we talked about this, when Scott Mitchell was filling in for me and talked about this, and it made big news over the weekend that Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter had their jersey numbers retired at the University of Colorado, and obviously this was a huge rush. Now, you could do it whatever you want for a Heisman Trophy winner, in my opinion. Travis Hunter should and did and will live in, the annals of Colorado football history as one of the all-time greats ever to play there. Heisman Trophy winner. Old school Colorado fans and alumni and players that have been through that program expressed their angst over the fact that, like, these guys kind of skipped the line. Even Travis, but especially Shedeur, skipped the line. And Deion Sanders was asked about it by the media because, of course. And I will say this. Coach Prime, I wholesale reject the idea of inducting his own son into the Hall of Fame effectively and in retiring Shedeur's jersey. He finished one game above 500 as the starting quarterback at Colorado, if I'm not mistaken. He won no conference championships. He had a lot of numbers himself. He led FBS in completion percentage. And
he even lost the People's Big 12 championship game in the Alamo Bowl. So, like, not even a People's Conference.
Did he even win? I don't even think he won a bowl game.
No, they only went to the one bowl game.
That's right.
This year.
That's right. They didn't make it
Colorado.
last year.
I don't know. I know they have bowls for HBCUs, so I don't know how he did it at Jackson State previous to Colorado. If they played bowl games there, but not at Colorado.
So I reject completely the idea that you could justify Shedeur being inducted into the Hall of Fame. Part of the argument, though, was like, these guys are skipping the line. There's other people who waited so long. And Deion pushed back on that, I think, with really good points. And he was like, because Bill McCartney, national championship winning coach at Colorado, was inducted into their Ring of Honor posthumously, right? Rashaan Salam had his jersey retired at the University of Colorado.
The Heisman winner, too?
Heisman Trophy winner, Rashaan Salam, posthumously. And one of Deion's responses to these questions was, we have to die to get recognized. That is a good answer. Now, again, make it clear. Shedeur doesn't deserve the honor. Travis Hunter does. And why not do it? You don't have to do it 5 minutes after he graduates. But absolutely, we should be doing this while people are around to appreciate it. And unfortunately, Rashaan Salam's death by suicide was an untimely, unexpected, people, I don't know how you fix that.
Yeah, I'm sure the folks at University of Colorado felt like they had more time to give him that celebration.
And by the way, it's not likely that it changes that outcome just because you honor somebody during their life, right?
Yeah.
The way that mental illness works and depression works.
Situation, yeah.
So that sucks. When you're talking about a coach, right? And the reason I'm passionate about this and the reason that I'm like, yeah, Deion, you're right, is because, there are figures in Utah sports history, in Utah sports, football, in Utah basketball, that I would like to see honored while they're still around. I would like for us to have these ceremonies and do this thing where we celebrate those people and express our appreciation for those people while they're still around. And in the case of Colorado, you probably should have waited a decade or two for Travis Hunter's jersey retirement so that he could come back after what I think is going to be a successful NFL career, and he could remember fondly the last 2 seasons at Colorado, and he could, you could tell that story to the kids. Well, man, you should have seen this guy play. He played both sides of the ball. When I was here at school, before you were born, this guy won a Heisman Trophy here. It takes away a lot of that by doing it right now. And so I don't like the timing of it, but I do like at least the logic behind, well, let's make sure we do it while people are still around. Colorado alum expressed hey, there's probably 3 more people that need to go in.
Yeah, wasn't Chad Brown one of the guys who clapped back and who had some valid criticisms.
And yeah, there was
this,
Tyler
He was
Columbus.
He was on the national championship team, and so that it is a fair point that the alumni is bringing up, and I think that it's kind of separate from what a lot of people are saying, which is what a lot of people's criticism are. What's going on with Shedeur being
that's just
numbers
stupid.
being retired?
There's just no way to justify it. It just sucks.
A lot of the alumni are coming at it as, look, we won a national championship. We had a Heisman Trophy winner ourselves, and a lot of us feel like there's people on our team that should have been honored by now, and you're putting you're putting these two who are still technically enrolled in the university ahead of us. I mean, I think that's fair and totally valid. That being said, when it comes, I have no issue with the Travis Hunter thing, even the timing of it. I mean, yeah, you'd like for there's some time to pass so that you can let things settle for a little bit, but the point is Travis Hunter is that guy that needs to get his number retired. The Shedeur Sanders, it feels completely nepotism, that blind spot you've talked about that Deion has for his children. It feels like it's completely born out of that, not by merit. And I think that guys like Chad Brown and these other Colorado alumni that were part of national championship winning teams or really good Colorado teams when they had their heyday in the late 80s, early 90s, like they should feel a certain way about, hey, how come not near enough of us have gotten recognized, but your son is getting recognized?
Remind me when we go down to Big 12 Media Days, if we get an opportunity to interview Coach Prime. I'm going to ask him who on this year's team jersey he's going to retire. Just to see what he says.
Shiloh's out of school too, right?
Yeah.
So can't retire. Can't say Shiloh, coach. Who on this team?
He'll probably be like, well, my son Deion Jr. is in charge of our social media, and we've retired his jersey. I don't know, but this is often the case when there's something that is so obviously like disconnected from just the right way to do things. There's often like a little silver lining in there, like, okay, but there's some part of this thought process that does make sense. Shedeur Sanders being inducted, I got to stop saying inducted. Shedeur Sanders' jersey being retired, that doesn't make sense. The logic in Deion's brain to help justify it actually does make sense. It's a good part of a problem. It's a well-constructed reason for a bad outcome where he's like, let's do this before it's too late for everybody, not just for my son, but for everybody. For Travis, certainly. Now, you could have bought yourself some time. You could have waited, and I think it would have been a better storybook ending. Travis Hunter probably doesn't even know where he's putting his Heisman Trophy yet.
Yeah.
He probably doesn't have the shelf constructed and hung in the house because he doesn't have the house because he's going to have to move somewhere.
And he doesn't have the space in his in his head to be thinking about how great an honor it is to have a college retire your jersey. That is a fair point to make when you're going to criticize the timing of Travis Hunter's this being way too soon for Travis Hunter to have his number retired.
Anyway, I liked that portion of it. So,
yeah, we do need to do better about that. Going back to Deion's point, we do need to do better about that across the board in sports, whether it's jersey retirements, Ring of Honor inductees, Hall of Fame inductions. Like, let's do it while the people are still with us.
It's
as best we can. Obviously,
it's like a beautiful thing when you see someone's widow and like children standing there and they're crying and their grandchildren are there or whatever. But it is so much better when it is that person.
It really is. And there's obviously accidents that happen. There's obviously you mentioned the Colorado player who died by suicide. There's things like that happen that you're not going to. Things happen where that person cannot be inducted while they're alive. And then that's unfortunate. But there's so many other times when it's like, why did you wait till he died to give him this honor? Like, let him enjoy it while he's still with us. So I'm with you. I do like that Dion is coming at it from that direction, and I don't like that he's using it to justify his son getting his jersey retired, as you said, but it is a good way to think about it.
Okay, we're going to take a quick one here. When we come back, we have to discuss one of the funniest moments in the history of sports broadcasting. Shaquille O'Neal had to rush off set last night, and it is just so glorious. It's exactly why. For the exact reason that you think he had to get up out of his chair and rush off set. But we're going to get into it. Sean O'Connell Show on Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM, proud part of Utah's ESPN radio network.
The other thing about Kawhi is, you all right, big fella? You all right? No. Catching a cramp?
Go ahead, keep talking, Jeff.
Yeah, we're on TV.
I know what we're doing. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's that olive oil you've been drinking.
I know.
Hey, take some matches with you. Hey, listen, he couldn't hold it.
He can't hold it.
After 40, he can't hold it no more.
That's at first.
He can't hold it.
Unless he's got something. That wasn't something planned, was it?
No,
that was not planned.
If you have not seen the highlight yet, that's Shaquille O'Neal leaving the set of Inside the NBA. They got the shot of him going right out the door. He's doing the old Rocky Mountain two-step, just hustling his way to the bathroom. Walked right off set, live set, cameras on, in segment. It's hilarious.
Go ahead, keep talking, Jet.
Chuck's like, what are you doing, man? He's like, just
the best parts are him saying, "Go ahead, keep talking, Jet," and Chuck go, "We on TV."
I know what we're doing.
I know what we're doing. Keep talking.
It's so, and look, he goes, and then here's the only place where it went awry. He came back, and they'd been joking the whole time he was gone. They'd been joking about him hustling to the bathroom.
That's just a small part of that clip. That goes for about 2 minutes. Find that on Twitter.
And then he comes back, and he's like, "No, it was just number one. Stop. You're lying." We've all had to walk like that before to the bathroom. We've all had to hustle with a gait that is not our normal walk, and it's hilarious. It's just that show and those athletes, former athletes, those analysts, they can get away with it. They can say anything, do anything, and it's hilarious. It's fun, and it's not even embarrassing. I mean, Shaq's probably embarrassed by it, but it's just like. Because it's the most relatable thing in the world.
You can tell he's super embarrassed because as soon as he comes back and he realizes they're still talking about it, he's like, and it's 90 seconds or so later, he's like, "Go to commercial. Like we don't need you guys. Why are you guys still talking about this? You should have finished your thought and then went to commercial. What's going on?"
It's so great. Oh my gosh, just hilarious. Find the clip.
Yeah, watch the whole thing on Twitter or YouTube. That was just a small snippet, the first 30 seconds.
They're just like us. They're like, we've all been in that situation, unfortunately, where you're just like, oh man. And it probably when you watch it happen to Shaq, it probably brings you back to the time where you yourself were just like, oh, this is an emergency and there's just nothing I can do about it.
A lot of us probably a school. Unfortunate incident at school.
Dude, you know the most embarrassing one I'm going to tell you the most embarrassing one for me, James.
Story time.
I'm sure it happened in school a couple of times, but whatever. When my wife and I were like in the early goings of our relationship, her family invited me to go down to Vegas with them, right? It was like the first trip I took with the family. This is way worse than being Shaq and just having to get up out of a chair and walk to the bathroom, okay?
Oh, no.
We were driving they had, like, big Suburban or whatever, and we're not children. These are all adults, okay? Everyone in the family is a grown adult. Her youngest brother at the time was, like, just graduated from high school, getting ready to go on a mission. He's the youngest one. I'm 34 years old, and I'm just like, hey, you gotta get off at the next exit. Her dad is like, we're going to make it to Vegas from Provo in 2.5 hours.
What about the time we're making?
Yeah, we are
Sean?
bombing down there. And I'm just like, you really have to get off this next exit. I really need to use the bathroom, like really badly. And he's like, oh, do you want me to just pull over? Because, of course, if you're just going number one, you can just pull over.
You're like, no,
I'm like, nope, I need a facility. So you're announcing to the entire car, right, that you have the exact problem that Shaquille O'Neal had on air last night. You're telling everyone.
So you're trapped in a car and you're not driving.
Yeah, and you have to, so you're telling all of them, and they're just like, oh my gosh, this guy, right? Because I'm new to the scene.
Yeah.
And then James, as is often the case, like there's no follow-up on Inside the NBA. I bet Shaq had to rush to the bathroom again after that. It's usually not a one-time deal.
Yeah.
So we got back in the car. 15 minutes later, I'm like, you got to get off at the next exit again.
Oh, no.
That was the most embarrassing potty emergency that I've had in my life. Rough. Thankfully, it didn't disqualify me from being a member of the family eventually.
And thankfully, you made it to the bathroom before it got even more.
James, can I tell you the truth of what happened, though?
Oh, no.
When we got to the gas station, I can't people will know on I-15 there's a gas station. It's like in Beaver maybe that has a Subway in it as well.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about when you're driving down south?
Yeah.
It's like gas station, like semi-truck rest stop, and there's a Subway. All right, that one.
Yeah, Beaver, Fillmore, one of those two.
It's one of those.
Yeah.
I run in, okay? And the little caution wet floor sign is out, the little maintenance cart is in front of the doorway, and there's a line of people waiting for when the janitor is finished with their duties. It's like the worst possible timing. I didn't wait. I just pushed everything aside, and I'm like, I'm really sorry. I know you're cleaning in here, but this is an emergency. Makes it 10 times worse.
Yes.
And the only thing that could possibly
You did make it, though.
Yeah, I did make it. And the only thing that could make it worse is then if I volunteered this terrible story on a radio program with my own name on it. Why am I talking about it? What an idiot.
Our listeners appreciate it. I heart one of those cities, by the way.
877-353-0700. I see what you did there. Make me feel better. Share your biggest potty emergency. You, me, Shaq, we're all the same, okay?
The grandma who inexplicably crossed the basketball court.
That grandma, yeah.
In the middle of a fast break.
877-353-0700. It's okay. Share your potty
Safe
emergency
space.
stories. We're giving away rounds of golf powered by the Utah Golf Association with our Festival of Tees. We'll do it on this show in about 45 minutes. On the Spence Checketts show on the drive, you'll be able to do that. He'll be able to give them away later today as well. And on Down and Dirty with Scott Mitchell. Forestdale? Is that really a place?
Yes, 18 holes to Forestdale.
We're giving away that sounds like a golf course in Middle Earth. Forestdale. I love that. 18
it's
holes.
Legolas's favorite golf course. As a matter of fact, he and Gimli meet up there all the time.
Man, you know what? We just lost every one of our listeners because we went from potty emergency talk to Lord of the Rings. It's over. We might as well just sign off for the day. But I will have a conversation with Chris Kamrani in 3 minutes. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Sean O'Connell Show, hour number 3 here on ESPN 792.1 FM. Chris Kamrani is going to swing by Bill Fraser in about 25 minutes. As Utah Hockey Club kind of had their final comments, their exit interview with the media, at least, Bear Tourney and company, saying goodbye to the first season, the inaugural year in Salt Lake City. So we'll get some of the final thoughts from Bell on that. Spring football in the books for Utah, and we started the show today talking about the tight end position in particular, but it fits a lot of the different offensive questions we've got. You know, the distribution of touches in the run game, how active is the quarterback going to be? We'll get to that at some point this week. The running back room, do you really need to add anything, or have you found your bell cow? Have you found your depth chart at the running back position? I asked the question also, if you support the idea of Utah football playing dirty in the transfer portal. If you're paying any attention, you know that other teams are playing dirty. Other teams in the conference are playing dirty. Other teams in the state are coming after your players who are under contract, so to speak. And even as other schools and other conferences are putting buyouts in place on NIL contracts, I mean, Utah's going to have to play by this game. They're going to play by a rule-less game, a game with no rules in a lot of cases. And I should say there are no rules because the rules are not enforced diligently. Tampering is not – it's illegal, but it's unenforced, and it's probably unenforceable because of the way the NCAA investigative structure is set up and because of the fact that there are so many different back channels that you can feasibly use in order to make contact with these individuals. Anyway, I put a poll question up. Do you support the idea of Utah football playing dirty in the transfer portal, like poaching, contacting guys not currently in the portal? And the two answers I provided, yes, everybody's doing it. That's 61% of the votes right now. 38.5% of the votes say no, that is beneath Utah. Post-spring, who do you think will be QB number 2 in the fall? Yes, I'm going to ask this question again in fall camp. Only three guys got real reps in the spring: Isaac Wilson, Bird Ficklin, and Devin Dampier, of course, is penciled in as your starter. So right now, 51.5% of the votes coming in for Bird Ficklin, the freshman. Interestingly enough, everyone, when I asked this question earlier after the transfer portal acquisition of a couple players, they're like, you don't even know what you're talking about. It's going to be the Oklahoma kid. Where are you now? He didn't get reps in the spring. Why did you get mad at me when you didn't know what you were talking about? And then the other question I asked on Twitter today, which Utah football tight end will get the most touches this fall? Dallin Bentley, Landon King, Hunter Andrews. They are 3 different types of tight end. Dallin Bentley, more traditional, hand in the ground, big body. Landon King is going to be your wide receiver with a little extra weight on him. And then Hunter Andrews is the Swiss Army knife. He can line up in the backfield. You can put him in motion. He can play running back in a pinch. And obviously you're going to find ways to get the ball in his hands in the passing game as well.
Did you see our guy in the comments say Carson Ryan as one of the others? Shout out to that guy.
That guy's a BYU fan. That's why he was trolling. Why'd you do that, sir? All right, Chris Kamrani of The Athletic promised that he would come on the show today, and he's here with us now. Chris, welcome. How are you?
Happy Earth Day, Sean.
Oh, it is Earth Day. That's right. What is what's the traditional celebration of Earth Day? Are we supposed to be planting a tree today? Do we give gifts to somebody? How does it work?
Pick all the dandelions possibly, humanly possible, before your hands start to seize up.
Dude, my children have created an insane dandelion problem in my backyard. Because when you're little, you love picking the dandelion and then blowing the little seeds off, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's how they pollinate. That's how they spread, people. My backyard is a mess. Anyway, happy Earth Day. Thanks for jumping on the show.
Always happy to be here, Sean.
All right, I wanted to talk some spring football with you. Are you okay with that?
Oh, I'm ready. What are we mad about?
We're not mad about anything. Well, that's not true. We're mad about the idea that Utah keeps having to re-recruit their own players, and everyone else is coming to try and poach and like pick over what they perceive to be a Utah corpse instead of just letting them compete. But should we be okay now as a fan base with the fact that you kind of have to play dirty. Like other teams are tampering with your roster, so if you're trying to keep up, you should, as a Utah coaching staff, in some way probably be tampering with other rosters too. Should we accept this or demand enforcement?
Well, you should demand enforcement first, but you should also be operating under the reality that there are no rules, and there are everybody basically can go 88 miles per hour, man, and they can go wherever they want and do whatever they want until there is some sort of commissioner or set of strict guidelines in place. I do find it tremendously hilarious and somewhat sad that this ridiculously cool rivalry is now whittling down to the Spider-Man meme of people just pointing at each other and say, you did this. No, you did this. It's like, come on, man. One, we don't have any concrete proof. We can obviously and honestly say that.
But how many of us have anecdotal stories, Chris? That's all we need.
That's all you need. And I would just tell Utah fans to take a step back, take a deep breath, and I mean, honestly, the reality is you're probably operating under some sort of alternate timeline where you have this deep-seated fear that the scales are tipping in the direction that you never thought they'd potentially tip in again after the last 20 years. But I am of the opinion that a healthy rivalry, a healthy state of both programs in this state is better for everyone, and it will only make each program better. It will only drive interest both locally and nationally higher. But I don't know, man. I'm going to raise my hand and say, just because it's put on Twitter by some sources that aren't always 100% foolproof, doesn't mean it's 100% true.
I don't disagree with the sentiment. I fully support it and agree, actually, that in a good football season, you want BYU and Utah both to be competing at a high level, and you want the rivalry game to be like the rivalry game was last year, where it comes down to like the final possession and things like that. It sucks when your team loses, but it's actually a lot more fun to watch football games when you don't know the outcome before it's kicked off. I've been making that case for a very long time. The interesting thing for me, or one of the many interesting things for me about this rivalry, and especially this new dynamic in a transfer portal and NIL world, is let's say Utah wins the game this year. I wonder if, because of all the cross-pollination and how well these rosters know each other, how well these coaching staffs know each other, how most of the players were recruited by both schools, I wonder if it just becomes a thing where part of the spoils of victory by winning the Holy War, you get like one of the other team's best players, or two of the other team's best players also, if it really becomes that fickle in the transfer portal between the two schools.
It's like kickball. Like, you could just get to alternate who has first pick, who has second pick, third and fourth, and so on and so on. I mean, like, listen, Sean, people are forgetting that this has been going on even before the transfer portal, man. People go between these two schools often and have for a very long time. Like you mentioned, the cross-pollination of these staffs is ridiculous. It's not like anywhere else in the country. Utah just hired a BYU alumnus to be their offensive coordinator. We know the crossover with everybody down there. Like, this is nothing new. I honestly think this is a somewhat of a paranoid take on the fact that the Utah fan base thought that they had left BYU in their rearview mirror. Considering I don't remember what it was exactly, the streak. It was 9 or 10, like 10 out of 11, 11 out of 12, whatever it was. That domination seems to have slowed a bit. And you're talking about a fan base that had to act as a little brother with an inferiority complex for 30 years before, your group showed up with Urban and those guys in early 2000s and obviously changed the script. But listen, it's better for everyone, man. I know people don't want to hear that. I know Utah fans just want to want it to be that 52-3 game in Provo every year where you sack Jake Heaps 12 times and force 19 turnovers. That those days are gone. They're gone forever. Neither school is ever going to be a outright dominant force again for a multitude of reasons. So just what you have to do is you just have to hope and pray that the coaching staff and the recruiting staff and the NIL staff and everyone else has their ducks in a row, and that they can recruit, retain, and find a way to pay players to stay at Utah.
Another thing about this is, while there's understandably a lot of focus on what's going on in Provo, and if you're in Provo, there's a lot of focus on what's going on in Salt Lake City, you can't pay exclusive attention to the in-state rival, because while that's happening, Arizona State all of a sudden has become a big problem that's spending big money. Oklahoma State is not going to stay down forever. Kansas State finds a way to win all the time. Colorado just gave their coach a $10 million a year contract extension. So while while the fan bases bicker back and forth here in the state of Utah, the athletic departments have to keep one eye on the rival, but most of the attention has to be on what else is happening at the NCAA level and certainly at the Big 12 level, because everybody is spending a lot of money right now and in participating in this nuclear arms race.
Exactly. And the one thing that can't be understated enough is the fact that this conference is up for grabs, and probably will be up for grabs for the next 5 years, unless Dion manages to build a superpower in Boulder after Travis and Shedeur have left. Maybe that becomes, part of the equation. You mentioned Kansas State, Iowa State, Kenny Dillingham at Arizona State. Like, these are all programs on the up, but nobody is currently distancing themselves from a talent point of view. Now, the one team you didn't mention that everybody should be concerned about is Texas Tech, because Texas Tech has billionaire oil money. And I remember in the offseason, Utah fans were kind of gloating that they thought that they were going to get this offensive coordinator who would want to go to Texas Tech over Utah, so on and so forth. It turns out a smart coach wants to go to a school that is bankrolled by the word that starts with a B and not an M, and that's billions, not millions. So Texas Tech has thrown its weight around in the portal quite heavily. Now, if Joey McGuire and that staff can, find a way to win big games, now that's the one team that I think everybody should be worried about, because no other team in this conference has the bankroll that the Raiders have.
But we've seen that not work for Texas schools before. A&M was like the original, and they just couldn't make it work. So I'm just banking on that being the case with Texas Tech as well. That's a good strategy, right?
Yeah. I mean, you can wish in one hand and do what in the other and see which one fills up first, right?
Oh, Chris Kamrani, our guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show, talking a little Utah football, spring football in the books. So it's a new offense. And my question for you is, how much does that offense actually have to produce? How many points per game does this offense need to produce for Utah to be back in the Big 12 title hunt? Because we know, or we think we know at least, the constant that is a Kyle Whittingham, Morgan Scalley defense. And we saw that last year, even though the offense did nothing. We saw that 2 years ago, even though the offense sputtered. The defense was pretty darn good until they couldn't bend and not break anymore. Eventually, you wear yourself down, and eventually the injuries piled up, and you're on the field too much. There's too many snaps and whatever else. Now you've got this offense, and Jason Beck's supposed to come in with Devin Dampier, and he's supposed to save this situation. How many points do they actually need to produce in your mind?
Just going off of statistically, those 2 years where Utah won the Pac-12 title with Cam Rising and Andy Ludwig and everybody kind of rolling on all cylinders, I think they were somewhere between the 34 to 38, 39 range per game. I would probably say at minimum 31 points per game, just because in this conference you're going to face some talented offenses, no matter how good Utah's defense typically is. I would push back a little bit. I felt like last year's Utah's defense just didn't look like kind of that old school, like, we're going to make this a 17-13 game. There were lots of games where uncharacteristic missed tackles. They allowed the opposing team to get the ground game going. Now, I don't, and this is just speaking defensively. Now, I don't know who's going to be up front. I know we have to operate under the assumption that there's always going to be new guys that roll in there and take over the mantle of, impressive defensive tackles, and somebody who's going to vie to be the next mayoral candidate of Sac Lake City. But we haven't seen one of those guys for quite some time. But I don't think it's wholly on Jason Beck's offense this year. I think it's going to take everybody obviously rising to the occasion. But it's all the questions really are going to resonate with the offense, because if anybody tells you they know what they're going to see this year, they're bold-faced lying to you. I'm just let's be 100% honest. I don't know how many fans were grinding on New Mexico Lobo tape last year. Devin Dampier, dynamic quarterback, accounted for a bleep ton of touchdowns, but he also threw 12 touchdowns and 12 interceptions. You got a kid out of Washington State who was a very talented young running back. Is he ready to be the next kind of go-to running back that Utah has needed and utilized in their best seasons? And listen, man, Sean, you and I have been talking about this on and off the air for too long now. Utah does not have anybody remotely imposing in the wide receiver room right now. I know fans are stoked that they got a couple defensive backs in the portal, some dude from Furman, great, whatever. But you have to have at least one or two game-changing guys on the outside if you're going to have a chance to compete for a P4 title. And I just don't see anybody on that roster right now. I could be proven wrong. They brought in some guys from New Mexico that know Jason's offense. The Zach Williams kid had a great game against UCF in the regular season finale. But after that, who is it? And again, this is a tale as old as time. There's a problem that the last 1,000-yard receiver, Sean, was Drez Anderson in 2011. That is so long ago. And sooner or later, Utah's going to have to buck that trend. And maybe it does under Jason Beck. And maybe his offense is going to be uniquely tailored to the various receivers they have on the roster. But if I was on the coaching staff, which I'm decidedly not for obvious reasons, you got to go out and find somebody in the portal to be your number one option.
There's a little bit of a chicken and the egg thing there for me. I thought for sure that last year, Dorian Singer being brought in as a transfer and Cam Rising being the quarterback, and those guys knew each other from earlier days of their football careers, I was dead certain that was going to be the thing that fixed the problem you're talking about. And unfortunately, it didn't work out that way. Dorian, I think, ended up scoring a touchdown last year, and Cam didn't get to play any meaningful football for the most part. And when I say chicken and the egg, because of that legacy or lack thereof that you're talking about, how do you get that guy in the transfer portal to come to Utah? Because everybody wants an elite wide receiver, everyone in the country. There's not a single team who, when somebody with any level of production, speed, size, etc., jumps into the portal, not making a phone call, not coming up with some kind of an offer. And in my opinion, I think Utah football might have to overpay to get this thing reignited and restarted. Is that an accurate assessment in your mind that, because you don't get to look at Utah and say, oh, yeah, man, that offense is always going to give good production, and look at all the NFL wide receivers they've produced. Of course I'm going there. You probably have to come up with $1 million to throw at the guy who otherwise would have gone somewhere else.
Well, you're doing your best, Charles Xavier. Yes, I 100% was going to say the exact same thing. You're going to have to overpay. You're going to have to overpay. You're going to have to hope it's somebody who has some sort of tie to the state or the staff. Obviously, we're growing as a state, and we're having more high-profile kids come out of the state. But listen, man, we've produced a couple pretty good wide receivers locally recently, and Utah's never really been in the equation. I know, Puka went to Washington, ended up at BYU. Now he's one of the best receivers in the NFL. The Jerome Miles kid who was at Corner Canyon playing with Isaac, I think he went to Texas A&M. Sooner or later, Utah's going to have to figure out a way to get these types of players on the roster, because I don't think where college football is now, and obviously it wasn't going to be like this with Jason Beck as your offensive coordinator, you're not going to win with, running the ball 60% of the time and then the other 40% of the time throwing it to tight ends. That's not the way it's going to work anymore. Like it worked, but I think Utah saw kind of the ceiling, the apex of what that can do. But I am, on many reasons, I'm fascinated to see how this offense looks from a wide receiver production standpoint. And maybe it's bubble screen after bubble screen and slant after slant, whatever. But like sooner or later, Utah's going to have to break through that glass ceiling and find a guy. Like the last guy that honestly comes to mind is Darren Carrington. The last time I saw a Utah wide receiver that I was like, this dude is the best player on the field, was Darren Carrington. I think that was 8 years ago, and he was only here for a year. So, yes, they're going to have to overpay, and they're going to have to figure out a way to get somebody like that into this program, because I just don't think you're going to be able to compete in a 16-team league that is up for grabs every year with subpar talent at the wide receiver position.
There's a lot of positivity. There's a lot of buzz, as is often the case around spring football, and with a new offense coming in and an experienced offensive line helping transition that thing over. There's this strange undercurrent, though, with Utah football that, postseason last year, there was some discord, and there was like, hey, was that Kyle Whittingham's last season? Is this going to be Morgan Scalley taking things over? Even in the building, there seemed to be some disagreement on when that timeline should fall into place. Is this Kyle Whittingham's last year?
Honestly, Sean, I thought the last 3 seasons were Kyle's last year on different levels, obviously with a chance to go out on top, and then, trying to wash the bad taste out of your mouth from back-to-back years. I don't know. I think it's super cliche to say we have to wait and see how it goes. But I honestly don't know if an 8-4 season with Utah coming, a couple games short of the Big 12 title game is going to be the thing that puts, Kyle into retirement, or if it's a 10-2 appearance in the Big 12 title game and a loss, or a 11-1 season and you win the Big 12 title and you get into the CFP for the first time. I honestly think Kyle doesn't know. I honestly think Kyle's now to the point where he just wants to see how he feels throughout the season and at the end of the season. But listen, if he didn't decide to retire after some of the most emotionally taxing years, from a few years ago to very frustrating injury-riddled seasons the last couple of years, I honestly don't know what's going to be the one season that forces Kyle to be like, you know what? I'm just going to get on the Harley and go west on I honestly don't know.
I think that part of the timeline for Kyle Whittingham, part of the decision-making process is like he can't be done because it was hard. You know what I mean? He can't be like exhausted out of it. Like he's not the kind of guy who's just like, oh, this is too much, so that means I got to go. I think a lot of the older coaches have done that. I think a lot of the guys that are slightly older than him in the cohort have been like, all right, this whole transfer portal thing, this NIL mess, all this stuff, it's too much. I'm done. I think there's a part of his personality, like a core part of his being, that's like, I have to keep doing it if it is hard. Like if he wins a conference championship, I think that's an easy choice. If it's like, 8-4 and we almost got there, a couple, ball bounces a different way. It was hard. It was emotional, but I'm going to go through it again because I don't quit things when they get hard. I think that's part of why he's still here.
Yeah, that's a good point. I am honestly, when the landscape of college football changed, I was like, one of my first thoughts was like, I wonder how Kyle would want to take this new reality and try to make the best of it. And the fact that he's still going in this NIL portal era is surprising to me for a lot of reasons, because he is that old school guy, but he's also proven to be somebody who's, been prescient on a number of topics. Like he was one of the first coaches to publicly talk about, wanting the playoff to expand and how he thought it would expand to a certain amount of teams. And obviously we've gotten to that point, but yeah, I think that's a good, sentiment is maybe it needs to just feel right at the end of the day. Maybe it just needs to be an old school, 9-3 season and see where the season ends come late November, early December.
All right, I could pick your brain all day, but we got to let you go so we stay somewhat on clock. Chris, thanks for your time as always. Appreciate you.
Thank you, sir.
Chris Kamran. Man, I didn't even get to half the things I wanted to get to, but glad to talk spring football and Utah football with Chris. Belle Fraser joins us next. Utah Hockey Club season and exit interviews are in the books. What changes are coming for the club? We'll discuss in 3 minutes on the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM.
Turned over. Verhaeghe tries to make the drag and can't. Not around Sergachev. He's not falling for that. Loose puck shot of it. They score! Florida gets the insurance goal. Who else? Barkov, the captain. His second of the game.
That was Alexander Barkov's second goal in a series-clinching win for the Florida Panthers over the Tampa Bay Lightning last year. You heard Sergachev's name in there. ESPN gave us sound Steve Levy on the call. Panthers and Lightning face off again. Game 1 tonight. Coverage starts at 6 here on your home of the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs, ESPN 792.1 FM. Belle Fraser, Utah Hockey Club insider for the Trib, probably going to be watching that at least with one eye as she follows everything happening in the NHL. Even though it's a Utah Hockey Club offseason, NHL playoffs are an absolute treat. Bell's kind enough to give us some time today to discuss the closing statements, so to speak, for Utah Hockey Club and some free agency decisions that the club has to make. Bell, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Doing awesome. Tampa Bay, Florida has become a fun little NHL rivalry. How closely will you be watching that series?
Really closely. I was actually on a plane to the East Coast last night, and they had ESPN streaming, so I watched all 4 NHL playoff games at once. It feels like Christmas when you don't have a team in it that you're covering or that you're rooting for. You kind of, obviously it's fun pulling for a team, but it's even more fun just watching it and enjoying that level of hockey. So the first round is always my favorite, where it feels like there's 3 to 4 high energy games every single night that you get to watch. And we've all been waiting for that Florida series to start. Some games have already played a game 2, and the Florida series is playing game 1 tonight. So that'll be a really fun one to watch. And I've been saying to a lot of the Utah fans that even though Utah Hockey Club is not in the playoffs this year, I highly recommend watching it. It just feels like an entirely different game, and it's a great way to learn more about the sport and get more invested.
How many teams actually have a chance to win the cup in your mind that are now involved in this playoff tournament?
I mean, it's kind of crazy in the first round. Like, you win a game or 2, and it feels like it's anyone's game. When you look at the Dallas and Colorado series, and even the Florida series as well, the fact that, and the LA Kings and Edmonton series, the fact that one of those teams is going to be out in the first round is pretty crazy. It's almost not when you lose, but who you lose to. So there's your obvious contenders like Winnipeg, Edmonton, Vegas, Colorado, Dallas, and people are saying Toronto too, but I don't know. I am always a believer that you get in and then you see what happens.
All right, let's talk about the Utah Hockey Club here. You wrote a piece for the Trib about the 6 free agents that the club's got to make some decisions on. I guess it's really 5 because Michael Carcone, his comments indicate that there's not real interest in coming back to Salt Lake City. But if we eliminate him, who is the priority here, do you think, for the club?
I think one you could not eliminate, but kind of feel pretty good about is Jack McBain, because he's a restricted free agent, unlike the rest of them. They're unrestricted free agents, and McBain is coming off his first deal since his entry-level contract, so his NHL rights still belong to Utah Hockey Club, and the team has some protection over him too. I imagine it's similar with other sports that people watch, but as an RFA, the only team that can sign McBain with a standard NHL player contract is Utah. And the only other way another team could sign McBain is through an offer sheet. And an offer sheet would force Utah to either match the offer of that team to keep McBain, or if they allowed him to go to that new organization, they would get a draft pick in return based on what the value of his new deal was. But I don't imagine Jack McBain getting offer sheeted from other teams, and I think he's a guy that the team really wants to lock up. He played up and down the lineup this year, top 6, bottom 6, power play at the end of the year, penalty kill. And the biggest thing that we noticed about him was he leaned in more to his offensive game, especially when he was playing with Logan Cooley and Dylan Guenther, but he didn't go away from the things that made him successful in the past. He still had the most hits of any guy on Utah Hockey Club. He fought a couple times, almost the same amount as Liam O'Brien, which is pretty crazy. So he's just a good depth player for them, and he has arbitration rights, which means if they can't agree on a salary, a third-party lawyer comes in to help the team and the player get there. He avoided arbitration last time for the last contract he signed, his 2-year deal. So it seems like they'll be on the same page, but as an RFA, you don't have that much power. So McBain kind of said, I'm going to sit back and see what happens. And he said he wants to return to Utah. So I think fans should feel good about that. And then Robert Bertuzzo as well. It seems like he will be retiring. He played in St. Louis for Utah Hockey Club's last regular season game of the season. He spent 10 years there, won a Stanley Cup there, and they put him in for that. His family was there, and he was pretty emotional about it. He said he has some decisions to make this summer. So if he is back in the NHL, I don't think it's going to be with Utah. He signed that 1-year, 2-way deal and only played 17 games. So I don't imagine him keeping him around. And then you've got Kyler Yamamoto, Nick Bukestad, and Nick DeSimone. Out of those 3, my personal opinion is that I think they should sign Nick DeSimone as a seventh defenseman, a depth defenseman. They have a lot of young guys in the pipeline, but not ones that they want to use as extras. If they call up Maverick Landreau or Artem Duda or Dmitry Simashev comes over, they're not going to want them to just be there on call in the NHL. They'll probably want them to develop a bit in the AHL or play in a legitimate role for the defense. So I think Nick DeSimone is a good option for that, and you could sign him for, a pretty low price relatively. And then Nick Bjugstad, it's kind of the sign of a team taking the next step. And I think a lot of fans who have been through a rebuild, I think back to the Rangers, when you have to say goodbye to veteran players who have been a big part of your room, but there's just not space for them anymore because your draft picks and your prospects are panning out and you're trying to bring in bigger talent. And it seems like that's what might happen to Nick Bjugstad, that he might be squeezed out of the lineup and out of Utah. But he had high praise for Salt Lake City. He said it's the best he's ever been treated as a player. He revealed that he was coming off of surgery last summer. People might remember he missed most of training camp in the beginning of the season with a lower body injury, which seems to be another back problem for him. And he said it stopped him from playing his best this year, so he wants to get stronger this summer. But yeah, I think for Utah Hockey Club and former Arizona Coyotes fans, Bjugstad will probably be the harder one to say goodbye to if they don't come up with a deal there.
How many guys, if any, don't like living in Utah on this team? Everybody seems to be, and I know that players kind of play to the fans sometimes, but you're around guys and have talked to them on a different level, sometimes without microphones in front of their faces. It seems like everyone really likes not just playing here in Salt Lake City, but actually living in Salt Lake City, having nice things to say about whatever, the community, the scenery, etc. Are there any guys on this team that didn't feel like Utah and Salt Lake City was the fit for them?
No, I don't think so, at least from the conversations I've had. And, we always knew that they would come out and say they liked the city and they liked ownership. But the way they've described it, especially during those exit day interviews, is really genuine. Mikhail Sergachev said it was the best organization that he's been a part of. So it's not just these new players like Dylan Gunther and Cooley saying that they love Utah and Ryan Smith. It's guys who've been in the league for, 8+ years, close to a decade. Nick Bjugstad, too, who's played for 5 other NHL teams. So it comes from people who have been in other markets and have had other owners. And a lot of the coaches and players obviously also just point to the fans, the community reception they get. They walk around, and Liam O'Brien was talking about going to the zoo, and some people ask for a picture, but they're all very respectful, and they like the kind of separation between hockey and being able to be in a family-oriented place. So there's been nothing but good things to say about it. And I think it doesn't come without – it was a tough transition for some, too. You look at someone like Clayton Keller and Nick Schmaltz and Lawson Krause. Those guys spent 7 to 8 years in Arizona. So they love Utah now, but I wrote a piece on the 1-year anniversary of the team getting sold, and they had to remake a home. So I think now that 365 days later, they look back and can feel settled, but it definitely wasn't a quick, easy, seamless transition, but it seems like everyone's pretty happy with the situation.
Did you hear anything from Armstrong or Bear or anybody at these exit interviews that you didn't expect to hear? Maybe that surprised you a little bit, or anything that stuck out?
I think talking about Jack McBain, something that he said, that I know you said Bill or Andre, they kind of set the standard things you'd expect them to say. No updates on the name. Delta Center renovation updates will come in the following weeks. They said they want to make playoffs next year. They're looking at free agents, et cetera, et cetera. But there was a quote from McBain where he said, there's only one goal in this room. The rebuild's over. It's not when, it's now in this locker room. And it was very kind of distinct, where they were sick of being called the rebuilding team, that maybe they'll make it, maybe they'll not. And I think that is what you want to hear from the players. You don't want to hear that, making the playoffs was just a fun goal and it's okay that we missed it. Ian Cole straight up said the end of this season was a disappointment, and saying anything else would be a lie. And I think it's really important to have those blunt guys in the locker room to be like, listen, this was a great inaugural season, but enough with the moral victories. Next year is really go time, and we actually need to turn a corner. So I think that stood out to me from a couple of the players, where, of course, they talked about how great everything was, but also they were realistic about being a legitimate NHL team in a real market now and having those expectations for themselves. So we knew those were going to come externally, but I think when you're seeing those expectations come internally, it makes you feel good. And Armstrong kind of said that too. He said, I'm building a playoff team and things of that matter. He wouldn't get too specific about what they're looking for or what they're willing to spend. He said he knows Ryan is aggressive and willing to make anything happen for them, but that doesn't mean they're going to spend unwisely. So I think there's going to be that balance there. Bill has been very cautious in this rebuild since 2020, and now he actually has the support to make a splash this summer, but it seems like he still has a very leveled mindset about that just because he has Ryan Smith kind of there to help him out. He's not just going to pay Mitch Marner $5 million above what he's worth just to get him in Utah.
Before I let you go, I did not know of your love for Java Joe's. They are not an advertiser, but we also don't have any coffee on the station right now, so I can talk about Java Joe's. What's the order, or do you mix it up at Java Joe's?
No, I have a very strict order. I get a 16-ounce iced latte with oat milk, honey, and cinnamon, and it's the best thing ever. I already miss it.
Well, next time you're in town, one of those on us because of how much you've helped us out this year, all right?
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
That's Belle Fraser. Seriously amazing. Best in the business. Utah Hockey Club insider at the Salt Lake Tribune. And by the way, Salt Lake Tribune, we've talked about this a lot in the transfer portal. We've talked about this with free agency now. Utah Hockey Club's got 5 guys that they've got to make decisions on. Salt Lake Tribune, build a little fence around Belle Fraser, okay? She's an East Coast gal, probably getting some attention from clubs back there because of the great work she did here in Salt Lake. Let's do our best to retain, shall we?
New York media, we know she's a lifelong Rangers fan, but hands off, all right?
You know what they can't offer in New York? Java Joe's, first of all.
Yeah.
But also,
they don't have good coffee in New York.
But also, yeah. More importantly, the Rangers, they've been around forever. Knock it off. This is new. This isn't like she was the first one on the ground floor. Let's go. Make it a career thing.
Yeah, she can't. If she ended up covering the Rangers, knock on wood that she doesn't. Sometime we want her here covering Utah Hockey Club. Hopefully Mammoth forever, right? She can't be a beat writer of a team that won their first Stanley Cup. Rangers have won Stanley Cups.
Yeah,
you can only do that here in Utah.
You can't be the one who writes the article about the first Utah Hockey Club All-Star.
Yeah,
like you can't do that for the Rangers. Anyway, get me the sports editor at the Salt Lake Tribune on the line, James. Let's go. Sean O'Connell Show. We're giving away some golf. 18 holes to Forest Dale, part of our Festival of Tees, brought to you by the Utah Golf Association. We will do that next, but I want to remind all of you out there that you need to put one number in your phone for when you have a roofing issue, and hopefully before you have a roofing issue, 801-839-4501. Don't make the same mistake that I made and wait till there's a torrential downpour and suddenly there's water leaking into your house where there's a seam in your roof. You don't want to have to be putting buckets underneath the light fixtures where the water is finding its way through, all right? 801-839-4501. Fix the problem before it's really a problem. Top Local Roofing can do any kind of roof replacement you want. Shingles, membrane, cedar shakes, metal roofing. They can also build a new roof for you if you're thinking about an expansion, an addition, an accessory dwelling unit that are becoming so popular here in the state of Utah. A roofing company you can trust with everything under the roof. And right now they've got a special deal going on. If you call 801-839-4501, you get on the schedule. They're giving you the free upgraded ridge vents. They're giving you 50% off new gutters, brand new seamless gutters, and they're throwing in a $100 gift card of your choice. Storm restoration, roof replacement, new construction. Top Local Roofing can handle it all. 801-839-4501. Giving away golf next as we close out the show on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. All right, 18 holes to Forest Dale, part of Utah's Festival of Tees, brought to you by the Utah Golf Association. And then we got some crosstalk powered by Burt Brothers. Burt Brothers does it better. But first, you have to tell me this. As Utah has installed a brand new offense, who is the top returning producer of yardage for Utah football? Coming out of spring ball, based on what you saw last year, who is still on the roster, who produced the most yardage, whether that's rushing yards or receiving yards? Who is the top returning producer of yards for Utah football in this brand new offense? And will that person actually have an opportunity to produce? Well, we'll find out, won't we? 877-353-0700 for 18 holes at Forest Dale if you know the answer to that question. Spence Checketts in the Drive are up next here on the Sean O'Connell Show, coming to an end. It's ESPN 700, and Spence is here, brought to you by Burt Brothers. Hi, Spence.
Hello, Sean. How are you?
Doing great. What's new in your world?
Well, transfer portal rumors.
Yeah.
People online angry at each other.
Uh-huh.
Brothers in arms upset.
A house divided.
Church meetings on Sunday will be awkward. I always hesitate to utilize Twitter stories for my radio program. I don't know what's real and what isn't. Part of me believes that app is mentally ill people throwing feces at each other all day. But look, whether it's...
What a wordsmith you are.
Oh, thank you. 4 hours every day.
It's horrific.
4 hours every day.
Horrific imagery.
That's what I believe Twitter has kind of digressed into most of the time. I mean, look, I'm still on it. We use it for the show. I tweet out the work, but I rarely send out anything personal because I just don't think it's worth it. But I think probably BYU fans, Utah fans, you have to understand that every school in America is doing everything that they can within the framework and the guidelines of what's allowed, which unfortunately right now seems to be everything, to try to acquire talent. And yes, that probably means at times trying to poach players from your school.
Well, I asked a Twitter question today. I put out a poll on whether or not you as a fan of the University of Utah, assuming that most people who listen to the show are, do you support Utah playing dirty, with the air quotes?
Mm-hmm.
Poaching, contacting guys who are not in the portal, saying, hey, I've got a car for you and an apartment and however much. Are we okay with that? Because that is the way it's done now.
Mm-hmm.
And 62% of the respondents say, yeah, everybody's doing it. And 38% say, no, that's beneath Utah. And, I mean, I understand both perspectives because you've kind of built this reputation on let's do it the right way. Well, the right way would be to follow the rules, but if you just follow the rules, I mean, we saw what happened with Dabo Swinney was like, I'm going to stand on principle, and I'm not going to do this transfer portal thing.
Right.
Clemson had a couple of shaky years, and that's Clemson. So, yeah, it's a decision you got to make for yourself as a fan, I think.
There's this did you ever watch Hoop Dreams, the documentary Hoop Dreams back in the day?
I've watched Hoop Dreams probably 20 times.
It's so well done, and it still stands up. It's a great watch if you've never seen it. And there's this scene where so it's Arthur Agee and then William I'm forgetting William's last name, but the two players that they focus on in Hoop Dreams, William ends up William Gates. Yes, thank you. William Gates ends up being a really, really good player. Arthur was pretty good, but William Gates ends up being the guy that went to Indiana. Unfortunately, couldn't stay healthy. But before the state championship, or maybe it was the first round of the state playoffs, William Gates was late to practice. And so to start the game, the coach benched William Gates. And they went on to lose that game, and they're out of the playoffs. And William Gates' older brother dropped a line that has always stuck with me, where he said, this ain't no time to be teaching nobody no lesson, because they had to go win that game. Okay, so, yeah, he was late to practice, but because the coach was so staunch in his principles and he wanted to be above the fray and prove a point, he sits his best player. They lose in the first round of the playoffs. They're not able to advance. So for any college football fan that believes your program is above what everybody else is doing, you're going to sacrifice the potential results you can get if you don't take advantage of every avenue at your disposal to add talent. Now, I have tremendous sympathy for college football coaches and college football administrators because of the lack of leadership of the NCAA, and the House versus NCAA settlement will provide some guidelines. I have been on this for years, and I'll continue to stay on it until they entirely lean into some sort of hybrid of the pro model, because that would solve the issue of the transfer portal when players can collectively bargain and sign contracts, and then they're at least on campus for a couple of years, and then you know exactly what you can pay them. And when everybody is following the same structure and the same guidelines, then there's no such thing as poaching, because you can't get paid more by another team if everybody is following the same rules. And so until that happens, Kyle Whittingham, Kalani Sitake, Bronco Mendenhall, Dabo Swinney, whoever it is, they're going to take advantage of this opportunity to essentially go out when the portal's open with some money in their pocket to try to poach players and add talent, because they're allowed to. Nobody is doing anything that's against the rules. That needs to be underscored. This ain't no time to be teaching nobody no lesson. You got to add talent, man, or else, you're not going to win football games. And so these fans that are voting like, hey, that is beneath our program. You want another year like last year? You want 2 conference wins? You want to not go bowling? Like, that's the deal.
Look, I agree with you, but I also understand why people feel that way, because it's hard to cast off the trappings of culture and morality and ethics and stuff like that in the face of just well, this is what everyone's doing right now. It's kind of like when Lance Armstrong was doping. He's like, literally everybody in the sport has tested positive for this stuff. Everyone I'm racing against is taking this stuff.
Right.
You want me to be the only one who didn't do it? And my answer during that whole time was, yes, Lance, I do want that. Because you keep telling us you're not the guy to do it.
Right.
That you're not doing it. So it's tough, because you have to be like, well, yeah, you got to compete. If you want to level the playing field, you got to do what everyone else is doing.
Yeah.
But also, you're doing something that is, quote unquote, wrong in order to level that playing field. And that's hard for people to embrace.
Well, and I think the other, I don't know. I mean, it seems like the other source of frustration. I mean, this Baylor point guard transfer who's going to play at BYU next year literally signed $1 million contract to stay at Baylor. And then BYU, according to Jeff Goodman, tripled the contract to get him to Provo. So BYU, at least on the basketball side, is literally outbidding teams for talent. That's what they're doing. But I think part of the frustration that people have towards BYU is, do not tell us that we're not seeing what we're seeing, because you are outbidding people for A.J. Debanza. You are outbidding people for the Baylor point guard. You literally had him back out of a contract he signed to play for you because you tripled his NIL salary. But the messaging, because, BYU has a propaganda media arm that is not media. They work for the school. You and I have guests from BYU TV on our show, and I'm fully aware of who signs their paychecks, and we all want to keep our jobs. So I'm not knocking on them. But the messaging that you get from the state-run media that BYU owns is, no, we outlove other schools, and we outserve other schools, and we will outdevelop other schools. Like, no, you are outbidding other schools because you have the money. And guess what? That's a great thing. Lean into it and stop muddying the waters. It's like Steve Bannon is taking over college athletics. Like, stop lying to us, okay? And so I think that's why there's a lot of venom towards the messaging that BYU propagates, that, no, we're not outbidding. We would never do that, but we will outlove you, we will outserve you, and we will outdevelop you. Like, the hubris and holier than thou just makes the target on their back even bigger. If they would just lean into the truth, I know, a novel concept, I think they could do themselves some favors.
I said the same thing. It's not something you should shy away from.
For
it's something that every other school in that position is celebrating. Oregon's just like, yeah, we got a bunch of money. Texas A&M, Texas Tech.
Yep.
It's like, yeah, dude, we can pay you more. Self-conscious about it in Provo. Self-conscious about it in Salt Lake, because you don't know if you can meet those demands.
Right.
And those demands exist.
Right.
Do you know who the top returning producer, rushing yards or receiving yards, for the Utah offense is?
See, before you said rushing and receiving, I'm like, man, it's got to be Isaac.
Well, if you add in, that's cheating, I think, because the quarterback is always the guy.
But it not like rushing and receiving. So, honestly, I have no idea who it would be.
It's Zacharias Williams.
That was the first name that came to my mind, but then in the back of my mind, it's like, it can't be him.
He had 10 catches for 101 yards.
101 yards as the leading returner.
By the way, James Peterson, you're going to love this one. If he was still on the roster, guess who would be the correct answer? Carson Ryan.
Oh, man.
But he's not.
Our texter loves it, too. I've been seeing his responses.
He's very upset that I
Our anti-Carson Ryan.
that I expressed affection for Carson Ryan.
The single texter?
Isaac Wilson.
There's one that seems to be in his feelings about Carson Ryan.
Isaac Wilson had a net
we appreciate
rushing gain of 47 yards last year. If we don't take away his sacks, which some people think you shouldn't, then he would be the correct answer.
Yeah. Good old Zach, huh? 101 yards. Well, a lot of work to do before fall.
Stay tuned for The Drive with Spence Checketts. Thanks to everyone who joined the show today and to all of you for listening. Let's do it again tomorrow on The Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM.